I glance over at my friend's sister. She stands out in every way. Her snow-white hair cascades down her shoulders, framing striking blue eyes. Her slim figure and alabaster skin make her look like she's carved from marble, though it's not the same pallor as mine. Hers has an ethereal quality, almost albino, and it's a condition she was born with. At 180 centimeters, she's also tall, with a presence that's hard to ignore. Her name is Leona Elizabeth Lycos. Because of her lack of pigmentation, her skin is extremely sensitive to the sun. She rarely leaves her home or the store she runs, venturing outside only under the cover of night. If I didn't know better, I'd assume she was a vampire. But I've seen her eat regular food, and vampires can't stomach anything other than blood. Still, the thought lingers every now and then, especially when Violet, my overly enthusiastic friend, forgets and asks Leona to join cooking lessons with my mom. Leona never says no, but rarely stays long enough to finish. I reach over to my cat, Zach, and scratch behind his ears. He starts purring immediately, then flops onto the counter, spreading his legs like he's demanding a belly rub. I oblige, laughing softly. He's always been spoiled. Leona approaches, her steps light but deliberate. Andrew, my other friend, shifts uncomfortably and moves to a chair farther from the counter, clearly avoiding her. I don't blame him. After what happened between them, his guilt must weigh heavy. Why does Zach only act like that with you? Leona asks, pouting as she stops beside me. Her eyes flick over me, assessing. When I try to pet him, he growls at me. He's my cat, I reply simply. Meows. Zach seems to agree, his tone almost smug. Leona frowns. You've changed, she says, her voice softer now. You too, I answer honestly. Her skin looks healthier than I remember, likely a result of her reclusive lifestyle. She doesn't respond, her gaze fixed on me like she's examining a puzzle. The intensity of her stare makes me shift uncomfortably. How's Zach's health? She asks suddenly, her attention shifting to the cat. He's fine, I say, though I recall how restless he'd been last night. Actually, he was meowing like crazy earlier. I couldn't sleep. Leona's lips twitch in amusement. He was probably in heat. What? I glance at Zach, who's now staring at me with what I can only describe as feline satisfaction. You mean he was horny? Exactly. You might want to consider neutering him. Since we're childhood friends, I'll give you a discount. Zach springs to his feet, fixing Leona with a glare that would terrify lesser beings. His low growl is unmistakable. I laugh. He doesn't seem to like that idea. Leona's eyes widen. He's really smart. He is, I agree, stroking Zach's fur. And no, I'm not neutering him. As a fellow male, I understand his dreams of fatherhood. Meow. Zach chirps in agreement, leaping onto my shoulder like he used to when he was a kitten. He settles comfortably, his fluffy tail swishing. Leona shakes her head, her expression a mix of awe and frustration. He's acting like a monkey. Zach hisses at her, and she recoils slightly. Ugh, all animals like me. It's my gift, and I built this store because of it. Why doesn't he like me? She pouts again, her frustration oddly endearing. Before I can respond, the door opens, and a deep voice cuts through the air. Victor, long time no see. Turning, I spot Edward Jonathan Lycos, Leona's older brother. Standing at 195 centimeters, he's an imposing figure with platinum blonde hair and piercing blue eyes. He used to be my personal trainer and martial arts coach, though my frail body limited what I could learn. Sup, Ed, I greet him with a grin, still sparkling in the sunlight. Edward groans. Are we still doing the vampire jokes? Thanks to that one movie, every Edward on the planet suffers now. I laugh. Couldn't resist. How's the bar? Good. Just finished building the leisure area. You should visit. Remember, I'm only open at night. Leona steps forward. Brother, did you finish the order I placed? Yeah, that was easy, he replies. Leona nods and moves to assist a customer who's entered the store. Meanwhile, Andrew approaches Edward, visibly uneasy. Yo, Ed, Andrew begins. How have you been? Fine, Edward replies. His gaze sharpens. Is my sister still mad at you? Andrew sighs. Yeah, if I'd known that woman was her only friend, I wouldn't have approached her. Edward's jaw tightens. You're lucky she hasn't punched you. Leona returns, joining the conversation. Tension hangs in the air, but Edward's calm demeanor keeps things from boiling over. Despite the awkwardness, it's clear everyone in this room shares a bond, fractured perhaps, but still intact. As the chatter continues, Zach purrs on my shoulder, his warmth a comforting presence. These moments, however chaotic, remind me that even with the ghosts of our pasts, we're all just trying to move forward. Edward's eyes widened in shock. Huh? You're married, Victor? Yes, I answered simply. His expression shifted to one of dismay, as if I had just confessed to a grave mistake. Marriage isn't easy, Victor. But if you're happy, I'll support you, he said, though his voice trembled slightly, as though memories from his past were surfacing. Andrew, standing nearby, burst out laughing. I frowned at him. Stop laughing. And why did he react like that? Andrew struggled to stifle his laughter. Oh, you don't know, do you? A few years ago, Edward was engaged, but his fiancée turned out to be the jealous and stalking type. It left him emotionally scarred. Edward visibly shivered at the mention, his face tightening as if recalling a particularly unpleasant memory. But aren't they the best kind of women? I asked, genuinely confused. Ah. Andrew and Edward responded in unison, staring at me as if I were a creature from another planet. Even Zach, my cat lounging nearby, let out a loud meow. Edward groaned, placing a hand on his forehead. Do you have a head injury? What? I replied, baffled. Andrew sighed. It's obvious he doesn't get it. He's always been like this, hasn't he? Always picking the craziest women. Edward nodded in agreement. Victor, listen to me. Jealous, stalking women are a nightmare. Stay away from them, or you'll regret it. I don't understand. If you accept their feelings, won't everything be fine? I asked, genuinely puzzled. Silence fell over the room as they stared at me, their mouths slightly agape. He's a lost cause, Andrew muttered. Come to think of it, he's always been this way. Edward sighed. Yeah, he's never learned. Has no one ever told you not to date crazy women? Leona, who had been quietly observing, suddenly slammed her hand on the table. Are you seriously ignoring the fact that he just said he's married? Edward blinked. All right. Who's your wife? Do you have a picture? Andrew asked, his curiosity piqued. I do, I replied, pulling out my phone. I had pictures of both Violet and Sasha, thanks to Natalia, who seemed to enjoy documenting everything. I showed them Violet's picture first. Andrew whistled. She's hot. I shot him a cold look. Keep talking, and tomorrow you'll wake up in New York Bay. The fish will love you. Andrew's smile faltered. It was just a joke. You wouldn't really, right? I didn't respond, maintaining my emotionless gaze. Right? He repeated, his voice tinged with nervousness. You know I keep my promises, I said flatly. In truth, I wouldn't harm him, but a little intimidation never hurt anyone. Edward placed a hand on Andrew's shoulder. Remember the brothers' code? Yeah, Andrew muttered. Leona suddenly snatched my phone, flipping through the pictures until she landed on Sasha's. Who's this? She asked, her tone neutral, but her eyes sharp. Oh, that's my second wife, I said casually. The room fell silent, and my three friends stared at me, their expressions a mix of shock and disbelief. If this were an anime, their jaws would have hit the floor. Hold the balls of the donkey, Andrew practically shouted, rushing to look at Sasha's picture. Leona's brow twitched, but she stayed silent. Edward leaned over to see the photo as well. When did you become such a Chad? He asked, his tone both tired and incredulous. Even Zach climbed onto Edward's shoulder to inspect the photo, then looked at me and raised a paw as if to congratulate me. Meow. Leona, still reeling, asked shakily, do they know about each other? Of course, I replied. Damn, Victor, Edward said, wiping an imaginary tear. I never thought I'd say this, but I'm proud of you. Andrew, however, looked skeptical. Wait. Our Victor? The guy who's the most loyal man on the planet? There's no way he'd chase after another woman. They must have pursued him. That's exactly what happened, I admitted with a small smile. Leona stared at me, exasperated. You know you can't marry more than one person in this country, right? I know, I said. But human laws didn't exactly apply to vampires. Andrew raised his hand like a schoolboy. Question. Do your wives get jealous when other women approach you? I blinked. How did you know that? Andrew groaned. Oh no, they're Yandra's. Yandra? I repeated, unfamiliar with the term. Edward sighed. Do you remember that anime with the pink-haired girl? Oh yeah, she was cute. Why? She's a Yandra, Andrew explained. Is that a bad thing? I asked, genuinely confused. Violet and Sasha were adorable, and that was all that mattered to me. All three of them sighed in unison. Just don't die, Edward said. I won't cheat on them, so why would I? I replied earnestly. Leona muttered, if he wasn't so dense, he'd actually be a good man. Edward's gaze turned serious as he looked at Leona. You're never getting married while I'm alive. Brother! Leona cried, her cheeks flushing. Andrew laughed. There it is. Edward the Siscon. Leona huffed, but there was a hint of a smile on her face. Whatever chaos my life seemed to invite, at least it made things entertaining.
Hey, welcome to Firescale Audiobooks. If you enjoy our audiobooks, please consider subscribing to the channel. Also, feel free to share your review in the comments section below.
Tell me, Zach, I said to my cat as I walked towards my house. I notice people's eyes on me. It's like think they've never seen a cat in their life. Even though my cat doesn't speak, I can deduce or imagine what he says. After all, he's a smart cat. Currently, Zach was on my shoulder as he looked around curiously. Meow. Zach meowed curiously. After living so long with my cat, I was able to differentiate his every meow. His being so smart helps a little too. Did Leona treat you well? I asked as I walked. Meow. 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 Translation. She treated me well, but she bathed me. I hate that woman. Oh, I see. I know you don't like to shower, but you can't go without a shower. What if your fur falls out and you go bald like a rat? Meow. Translation. Makes sense. See? I know you don't like to shower, but a shower every week isn't too bad, right? I spoke with a smile on my face. I look over my shoulder and see Zach staring at me with a horrified look. He seems to have heard something scary. 3 baths a month? I tried to negotiate. Meow. Translation. 1 bath a month. 2 baths a month. That's not negotiable, I said. Meow. 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 Translation. Tyranny. I demand democracy. We live in a free country. Even cats have rights. Sigh, Zach, if you were a quiet cat, I'd agree to a bath a month, but you go out a lot for walks, and when you come home, you're all dirty. I spoke. Meow. Meow. Translation. But, you're right. Now that I stop to think, what do you do on your walks? I asked curiously while ignoring people looking at me open-mouthed or commenting if I was crazy or not. Meow. Meow meow. Translation. I'm going after the female cats. They love me, even though there are other cats. Oh, didn't you fight for dominance? I asked while raising an eyebrow. Meow 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 meow. Translation. Of course I fought. I used that technique called the T pose that you taught me. Using this technique, I asserted my dominance, and now I have 4 wives. That's my boy, I said laughing as I took him off my shoulder and carried him like a baby while stroking his stomach. Meow meow. Translation. Kimochi, you are very good at this. Huh? Why did the first word come out in Japanese? Am I imagining it wrong? Looking up into my cat's satisfied face, I shrugged like I don't care, then put him on my shoulder again. Arriving at my house, I opened the door and enter. I came back and brought Zach with me. I spoke out loud. Meow meow meow. Translation. Sup bitches, I'm home. Zach. I hear my mom screaming as she runs towards me. I see Zach's fur rises, and he quickly jumps off my shoulder and falls to the ground, then he runs away from my mom. Hey, don't run away from me, Zach. Get back here right now. My mom yelled as she looked at Zach, who ran up onto the couch. Meow. Translation. Never. Ignoring my mom and Zach's banter, I walked towards the basement stealthily. When I first enter the basement, I see what my old basement looks like, but when I put my foot on the first step, I see a little magic circle appearing, and soon the basement changes. Which technology is very useful. Kagaya, what are you doing? Let me kill that bitch. I heard Violet's voice. I'm sorry, Lady Violet, but I can't let you do something you'll regret. Kagaya spoke in a neutral tone. Well, looks like I made it on time. I walk towards the room Sasha was in, and when I open the bedroom door, I see a rather surprising scene. Kagaya was holding Violet on the ground with a jiu-jitsu technique called a rear naked choke. A little far from Kagaya was Natalia, who was just watching everything as usual. Sasha was watching everything with a neutral gaze. Currently, she was sitting on the bed, and beside her was Maria, her personal maid who was a former hunter. Violet looked quite startling. Her face was distorted with hatred, and she was glaring at Sasha with her red eyes gleaming with killing intent. I realized Violet was trying to use her powers, but Kagaya was smothering her before she could concentrate on using them. As expected from an older vampire, she managed to immobilize Violet easily. I guess it wasn't that easy. Looking more closely, I realized that Kagaya is trying very hard to hold Violet down. Yo, I said with a smile on my face. Suddenly, all the women in the room look at me. My wife Violet's killing intent seems to explode when she sees me, Victor. She didn't call me darling as usual. I look at Kagaya and nod my head indicating for her to let go of Violet. She looks at me with a face that asked if I was sure. I close my eyes and nod my head as I smile. Violet suddenly jumps towards me, and I realize she's trying to stab me with her hand. Since I'm not ready to feel this pain yet, I take her hand and, as if it's a very elegant dance, I shift her center of gravity, then quickly sit down on the floor and drop her onto my lap. I also realized she wasn't putting that much force into her attack. Huh? Violet didn't understand what happened. Well, I seem to still remember the dance lessons I took in the past. This was a long time ago when I attended a multi-billion company CEO's party. As my mom was the CEO's attorney at the time, I had to participate in dance with the CEO's daughter. And because of that, I had to train in classical dance for 2 months. It was the most irritating time in my teenage life, stopping to think now. That was the same day I found Zach abandoned in the street. I hugged Violet around the waist and spoke into her ear. Calm down. I'm not going to disappear or anything. And you're not going to lose me. So you don't have to attack me out of jealousy. Violet seemed to melt when she felt my embrace and heard my words. I noticed her eyes revert to their normal violet color. And to think that there was someone other than Violet's mother who could calm her down, Natalia commented. I look at Natalia, and I see her with a small smile on her face. I could also see Sasha and Kagaya's shocked expressions. Why are you looking at me like that? I asked as I started stroking Violet's head. When Violet goes crazy, she only gets calmer when she destroys everything around her. Sasha spoke in a neutral tone. It was like she was used to it. I also noticed that she was looking at Violet with an annoyed look. I noticed that Violet's smile seemed to grow in a distorted way, and she put her face to my chest and started sniffing at me. Darling, 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 darling. She started talking like she was possessed by some evil spirit or something, although she looked quite adorable now. Suddenly her smile is gone, and she looks at me with a serious look. Why am I smelling another woman? I want to get Zach from the vet. I found my childhood friend who works at that place, I replied while smiling. When I saw Violet's eyes change to blood red, I cupped Violet's cheek in both hands and pulled. Don't think nonsense. Stop, she said in a funny voice. I stopped pulling her cheek and kissed her. Umph. She made a funny sound of surprise, but soon she returned my kiss. As we practiced a few times, we were a little more experienced. Suddenly, I feel a burst of murderous intent. I stop kissing Violet and look at Sasha with a smile on my face. Humph, she turned her face away in annoyance. This seemed to make Violet satisfied. She smiled lovingly and hugged me possessively. You know I'll never run away from you, right? I commented as I stroked Violet's white hair down her back. Yes, but... She bit her lip. I made her look at me. I needed to say this. I don't know about Ruby yet, but Sasha is my wife. I want her close to me. Violet's face distorted in annoyance. I look at Sasha and see that she was a little embarrassed. What do you think about this? I asked her opinion. And me? She pointed to herself. She didn't seem used to showing affection. I do not know Dash. Suddenly Kagaya appears beside Sasha and slams her elbow into Sasha's stomach. Ouch! What are you doing? Sasha yelled angrily. Don't be indecisive now. This is about your future, Kagaya spoke in a neutral tone. When Sasha heard Kagaya's words, she was speechless for a moment. I noticed Sasha's face has changed several times, embarrassed, curious, scared, and a little obsessive. It was quite interesting to see how her face constantly changed. Bitch, begone. He's just mine, my darling. Violet spoke possessively as she hugged me, but she didn't look as pissed off as before. Suddenly, Sasha's face changed. Her eyes turned blood red, and as soon as she looked at Violet, she gets annoyed. Oh, her face distorted in anger. This bitch. Sasha gets up from the bed, then she uses her speed and appears beside me. She hugs me from behind in a possessive way and says, "He's my husband, bitch." I feel the sensation of two mature Sasha bunnies on my back. Violet looked at Sasha annoyed, then she hugged me too. As she was sitting on my lap, I could feel Violet's two bunnies who weren't the same size as Sasha's bunnies. But they were a perfect size. They were neither too small nor too big. They were perfect. I was in heaven now. Well, that was somehow resolved by Lord Victor. Kaguya spoke with a small smile. Are you sure? They look like they could kill each other at any time, Natalia commented as she looked at Sasha and Violet, who were glaring at each other as the two women hugged me possessively. Well, they can't just hold hands and say they'll get along with each other. After all, you know Lady Violet's personality, right? Indeed, Natalia said. This is just the beginning. Lady Violet is angry at Lady Sasha, but she doesn't want to kill Lady Sasha like before. Lady Violet is just acting like a possessive teenager now. Kaguya explained, then she continued. And Lady Sasha has stopped being stubborn about her feelings, and is acting more honestly. That's progress for a woman like her who isn't used to showing affection openly. Natalia nods her head and puts her finger on her face. Then she commented with a small smile on her face. I wonder what will happen when Lady Ruby shows up. Kaguya looked at Natalia with a neutral look. You're having fun with this whole situation. Huh? Natalia looked at Kaguya, and she commented with a small smile on her face. Who knows? I could be having fun, or I could just be pretending. Kaguya lets out a small sigh when she sees the blonde maid's attitude. As my two wives hugged me, I looked at Kaguya. Kaguya, call that witch here. I need her services. Kaguya looks in my direction and nods. Then, without question, takes a small ball from her pocket and smashes it. Soon a magic circle appears on the floor. And slowly, the witch June got off the ground. She was just wearing a big sweatshirt and short shorts. It looked like she was about to go to sleep. Ah! June was surprised for a moment, but then she soon asked Kaguya, annoyed. Really, maid? I was in Japan about to go to sleep in a hotel after a good shower in an onsen. She knows how to enjoy life with the money she earns. Huh? Kaguya just looked at June like she was looking at a pile of garbage. June, I said. June has stopped looking at Kaguya and looks at me. Then her face takes on a shocked expression when she sees me. Oya oya? Has the number of women grown? Isn't that Lady Sasha? June commented, smiling. Sasha and Violet stop staring like they want to kill each other and look at June. Sasha looks at June confused like she was wondering why June was here. She seemed to know June. Violet looks at June neutrally as if she doesn't care about her. How much do I owe June? I asked. I remember I placed an order before, and she said she was going to charge me in the future. It's better to know how much money I owe her now so I can plan my steps in the future. Oh! June flashes a greedy smile. Then she says, You owe me $1,000,000, just as she was about to complete her sentence. She closed her mouth and looked at Violet with a cold sweat falling off her face. Violet looks at June with a small smile on her face. I realize her red eyes are staring at June coldly. Excuse me? I didn't hear what you said. Can you repeat that? June's face darkened a little when she saw Violet's expression. Cough! She pretended to cough to change the subject, then continued. I mean, you owe me $30,000, she said with a gentle smile. Good, Violet said, and then hugged me again while ignoring June. I also feel Sasha hugging me from behind while looking at June neutrally. She seemed to be breathing down my neck too, although she was doing it quite sneakily. I was a little surprised that Violet didn't mind Sasha's presence right now, but that's a good thing. I know it's hard for the two of them to get along, but the important thing is they don't try to kill each other while I'm not around. But $30,000, huh? That's a big amount, but I think I can get it in one day if I steal from the right thieves. I need you to make me an outfit and a black mask. I tell my order to June. Huh? June looked at me strangely. What happened? Are you going to tell me you can't do it? I asked. I mean, I can do that, but your requests are always weird, huh? The first one was a fake ID, and now it's clothes? What are you planning? She asked with a curious smile. Knowing about this information is going to cost money. Do you really want to know? I spoke while smiling a little. I could see June's smile twitch a little when she heard my words. You're greedy, huh? June commented. Not much as you, I said. June looked at me shocked, and then started to laugh amusedly. Ha 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 ha. You're right. You're right. You're right. I am a greedy witch. Suddenly, several magic circles started to appear on the sweatshirt she was wearing. The circles start spinning quickly, and soon several green lights start to come out of June, and slowly, her outfit starts changing into a professional women's suit. My name is June, codenamed the Greedy Witch. I am the witch who solves all the problems related to the modern world with a certain amount of money. Of course, she spoke in a professional tone, while showing a small smile in the last sentence. Oh, I said while clapping my hands a little for the light show. I also noticed that a card appeared in front of me, and when I took the card, I saw that it had a golden color and had the name June carved into the card. I think this card was made of pure gold. Thank you. Thank you. She spoke gratefully while smiling satisfied. She seemed to be quite narcissistic too. I never thought this piece of garbage dash cough. I never thought June would give you her code name. Hey, I heard that. June looked at Kaguya irritably. Kaguya just ignored her as she looked at me. Codename? I asked curiously. Codenames are a title given by the Queen of Witches. For the Society of Witches, a codename is a form of status. But not only that, if a witch gives her codename to someone she judges as a customer, a golden card will appear. Sasha explained as she hugged me tighter. Using this card, you can contact the witch to request her services anytime you want. It seems like witches work 24 hours a day. They don't seem to get rest. Oh, thank you, Sasha, I said gratefully. I felt Sasha's body tremble a little. She made a cute sound and hid her face behind my back. Tisk. Violet clicked her tongue in annoyance. She looked agitated. I patted Violet's head, and soon her expression changed to a satisfied one as I look at the golden card in my hand and think, which society seems to be more interesting than I thought. A society built on a form of energy called magic. Huh. But why did you give this to me? I don't have as much money as my wives do, and you know it. I told June. June looks at me and smiles. Yes, I know. You're poor now, but I smell money coming from you, and in the future, you'll have a lot of money. I'm betting on that. She flashes a confident smile, and I never lose when I make a bet. She smiles like a teenager who has found something interesting and continues. Not to mention that you seem to be very close to the two richest heiresses of the noble vampires. Oh, she doesn't know that Sasha's clan has lost its noble status. I feel Sasha's face moving a little behind my back. It seems she's noticed that too. Well, June could be lying, so there's no guarantee she doesn't know anything. Getting back to business. What do you need? June asked as her eyes sparkled with the US dollar symbol. Do you know that anime called Tokyo Vampire? I asked. I didn't watch the anime, but I saw the protagonist's image several times on the internet. The protagonist had white hair, different colored eyes, and was wearing a black outfit. He was transformed by a beautiful vampire with purple hair. Yes, I watched it when I was in Japan. I need an outfit similar to the protagonist, but I want some changes to the outfit. The outfit should look like a straitjacket used to arrest criminals. The boot should be a little bigger, and the mask should just cover my mouth. Okay, do you intend to cosplay? She asked curiously. I just looked at her as I smiled and stroked Violet's hair. My wife seemed to be much calmer now. Actually, I think she's almost asleep. If you're so curious, I can tell you if you cancel my debt, I spoke. Forget what I said. She gave up. It seems her greed is higher than her curiosity. June claps her hands, and several magic circles appear a little away from her then. Soon, an outfit appears. The outfit that appeared is the anime protagonist's outfit, but slowly the outfit began to undergo changes that I asked for. Do you want something like this? She asked. I look at the outfit and nod satisfied. As expected of a professional witch, praising me won't make me lower the price. She spoke with a big smile on her face. How much did the clothes cost? I asked. June puts her hand to her chin and looks at the outfit as if she's thinking about something. I feel Violet move in my arms. She looks at the outfit I ordered and her eyes start to sparkle for a moment. She seems interested in the outfit. I also felt Sasha, who was hiding her face behind me, peeking a bit at the outfit I asked for. She looks at the outfit for a moment and says, "Cringe." Oof. I felt a stake piercing my heart. For a moment my smile almost broke, but soon I recovered and said, "I know. That's why I ordered this outfit. No one would ever think a vampire would use this outfit to do what I'm going to do in the future. I may do it for you for free if you tell me what you intend to do." Denied. You can't have everything in life, which... I spoke with a smile on my face. Then I continued, "Choose. Do you want money, or do you want to satisfy your curiosity?" Ugh. She makes a difficult face. Then she speaks, screaming, "I want both." Omo. As expected from a witch with the title of greedy. "But unfortunately, that's impossible," I said, laughing. June pouts. She looks very pretty now. I feel Violet and Sasha looking at me with a dangerous look, my smile growing. "How do you know what I was thinking?" "Our connection told us." The two spoke in a neutral tone. "Oh, interesting. So they can feel my emotions and my surface thoughts too. Huh." I start to think about what I'm going to do when Violet, Sasha, and I finally get alone. Suddenly, I hear two small explosions near me. I look down and see that Violet's face was very red, and I could see that there was smoke coming out of her head like it had overheated. I turn slightly and look at Sasha's red face. I could also see little yellow lightning flashing above her head. My smile grew even wider, and I couldn't help but honestly say, "You guys are so cute." Sasha suddenly wakes up from her stupor and screams, "Dido, not look at me." She quickly hides her face behind my back. I could even hear her heart beating rapidly. Violet just hit her face in my chest while she had a huge smile on her face, and, just like Sasha, I could hear Violet's heartbeat. And once again, I understood that they weren't like the vampires in the movies. After all, they weren't dead, although normally my wives' hearts beat very slowly. I looked at June and saw her face distorted. She looked like she had eaten something bad. I laughed when I saw her expression. "How much did the clothes cost me?" "The clothes didn't cost anything." "Ah." "I just had to use my powers to create the outfit. I didn't use any complex incantations or anything like that. I just created fabric. That's something very easy to do." "Oh, you were very honest," I said, surprised. For some reason her face turned red. "Humph, I just did it for free because I have a long friendship with Lady Violet and because I can create fabric easily. Make no mistake. You still owe me? Why is she acting like this all of a sudden?" "I see. Thanks," I said with a small smile. "Humph." She turned her face away and started muttering something about how it wasn't fair and she should look for a boyfriend or something. "Can you create another outfit for Violet?" "Of course, in a female version." "Huh." Violet was surprised. June looks at me and nods. Then she claps her hands again, and what happened before is repeated. Soon an outfit similar to mine, except in a female version, was next to my outfit. I looked at Violet. "You looked interested, so I got you one?" "Darling." She suddenly climbs on top of me, with a crazed smile on her face, and bites me. I feel my blood draining down my neck. "Bitch!" Sasha got annoyed for some reason, and soon she bites my collarbone and starts sucking my blood. Feeling my wife's emotions and desires, slowly, my teeth start to change, and my eyes change to blood red. Then I bite Violet's collarbone. Ah! Violet stopped sucking my blood and moaned a little as she hugged me tighter. Kagaya, Maria, June, and Natalia, who were seeing this, all react differently. "For some reason, I feel like I should get a boyfriend," June commented. "No man will want a gold digger like you," Kagaya spoke in an emotionless tone. "Oh." June's face distorted in anger. "Are you frustrated that your master is being stolen from you, maid?" Kagaya's eyes flutter a little, and she is silent. She didn't want to waste time talking to June. June, thinking she's guessed right, started to smile. "I feel sorry for you, maid. Lady Violet will be stolen from you." Seeing that Kagaya didn't react to her words, June was confused. Then she thought, "Did I get my guess wrong?" "Lady June, I have a job for you," Natalia suddenly said. "Oh." June loses interest in Kagaya and looks at Natalia with greedy eyes. "I want you to investigate what is happening in this city," Natalia said. Kagaya, who listened to what Natalia said, began to pay attention to the conversation. According to Lady Sasha and Kagaya, A vampire named Lucy stole something from the church. I want to know what that something is. June makes a very serious expression. This is going to cost a lot of money, you know? I know, Natalia said, smiling. Then she continued, money is not a problem. Just investigate it for me. I accept your request, but remember you must pay 50% of the money up front. And if another witch is helping the church, I can't interfere too much. After all, you know the rules of witches, right? Natalia smiles gently. Rule number 1 of witches. A witch must not conflict with another witch. If the witch's employer is an enemy of an individual who is hiring another witch, both witches must abandon their duty immediately. She explained as she was remembering, and then she continued. Of course I know. Good. June throws 2 small spheres at Kagaya, and soon she disappears into a magic circle. Kagaya raises her hands and takes the 2 spheres June threw and puts them in her pocket. An ordinary maid doesn't get enough money to pay a witch for this kind of service, she commented. Natalia just displays a gentle smile and doesn't say anything. Soon she walks towards a wall and goes through a secret passage. TSK. I don't like this, Kagaya said, annoyed, when she saw Natalia leaving without giving an explanation. Then she looked at Victor, who was biting his wife's neck, and several thoughts were going through Kagaya's head now. After solving the problems with my wives and getting an outfit to disguise myself as James Smith, I go to college. When I get to college, I notice the students looking at me differently. They seem to recognize me from the game that I played with Juan yesterday. I also notice some female students staring at me, as if they were looking at prey. Some male students were staring at me, with explicit disdain on their faces. Seeing all this, I just ignored it all and walked towards my classroom. Isn't he that player who jumped off across court yesterday? Did you see the video? A man spoke. Yes, and to think that there was a player with those skills in this school. How did he never get recognized? Another asked. I think I overreacted. Meh, I didn't mean to hide my changes from the start. What's the point of gaining powers if you can't use them? I just have to avoid doing something humanly impossible like jump to the height of a building or something. If things get out of hand, I just have to get out of college. After all, I decided to stay in college just to satisfy my desire to play sports. Arriving in the classroom, I realize I arrived too early. I look around, and soon I see my economics teacher. He is a tall man. I think he is 200 centimeters tall. He has an amazing white mustache, white hair, and sapphire blue eyes. He was wearing a well-fitting suit, and despite being over 60 years old, he looked like a man who was in his 30s. In the past, when his family and I went for a walk, I could see that under those clothes he wears there is a man with a well-trained body. How did he manage to keep his body toned after being over 60 years of age? Oh, Victor, it's been a while since I've seen you in my class. He spoke with a small smile on his face as he turned and looked at me. Looking into Adam's sapphire blue eyes, I felt an instinctive danger in my body, but the moment I felt that danger, the feeling I got disappeared as if everything I felt was an illusion. But I knew this wasn't an illusion. I decided to keep this incident locked in my head. Professor Adam, you talk as if we haven't known each other for years. It's only been 3 days since I came to your class. He laughed a little with an amused smile and said, Indeed. I walk up to the teacher, and the closer I got to him, I couldn't help but look at his height with a bit of shock. He was the tallest man I've seen in person, and a 2-meter tall man can be very intimidating. He leans against his desk and folds his arms as he looks at me. Tell me the news. I hear you had a show yesterday on the basketball court. Do you know that too? I asked in mock surprise. Everyone at this college knows what happened, and you made a lot of enemies yesterday. After all, there are a lot of people who worship the captain of the basketball team. He commented casually. Oh, I display a small smile on my face. He looked at my smile, and soon he exhibited a smile of his own, as if he understood something. But you don't mind, right? How do you know? I asked with mock shock, as if he had discovered a big secret, but of course, I was still smiling. Hey kid, how long do you think I've known you? I've watched you grow up with my kids. I know your personality very well. He chuckled. He and I laughed together in fun. This teacher is an old acquaintance of mine. He is the father of 2 of my childhood friends, Leona and Edward. This man's name is Adam William Lycos. But don't cause too much trouble. The dean of this college is supporting Juan, and he might try to do something with you. Is he going to try to kick me out of college or something? I spoke in disdain. If it was before, I would be worried, but now, I don't care anymore. Probably yes, but seeing as how you don't care, I think it's okay with you. Just don't cause too much trouble since that might make your parents sad. He warned me. I appreciate the concern, but don't worry about my family. I'm sure my parents won't be upset about something like that. After all, knowing my mother, if she finds out about every incident from beginning to end, she is going to try to sue the school. What about my dad? He'll just nod at me satisfied. After all, he was the kind of man who works things out with his fist in the past. Well, if you're saying so, Adam said as if it didn't really matter to him. You look paler than before. Are you eating well? He asked curiously. Yes, with the food my mom gave me, I even gained muscle. Look, I said while pointing to my arm. Ha, he laughed like he thought of something very funny. He and I both know I was lying, but, as expected from my childhood friend's father, he's a man who doesn't care much about things that don't involve his kids directly. From what I understand of Adam's personality, he's the kind of man who can see the world burn, and he won't care. He would only care about something if his kids were in the crossfire. He's very protective of his family, and that's why he and I get along. After all, we are alike. You tell good jokes, Victor. He spoke with a small smile. I didn't try to joke. As always, your sense of humor is weird, I commented. Try to live as long as I do. I'm sure you'll have a few screws loose in your head. He looks into my eyes and speaks in a deep voice like he's inducing me to do something. I even noticed that his blue eyes sparkled for a few seconds. What do you think, Victor? Why don't you loosen up a little? Huh? What are you talking about, teacher? I asked, confused. He closes his eyes and sighs a little relieved. Then he smiled. I was asking how long will you hide behind this mask that you created yourself? Adam, you know that all beings with intelligence in this world who live in society hide their true self, right? I spoke with a cold little smile. Indeed, after all, we weird beings have to adapt to society. He spoke in a neutral tone, then looked at his watch. Victor, class is starting. Are you going to participate? Or are you going somewhere? He asked. I'm going to the swim club. I said I need to experiment to see if I have weakness in the water. Oh, I see. As I've known you for a long time, I'm going to put that you were present in today's class, he said. Thank you, Professor Adam. He didn't need to do this, but as it's a kind gesture, I just have to thank him. Soon I leave the classroom and walk towards the swim club. When Victor left the classroom, Adam walked towards the window and, with a simple gesture of strength, he jumps towards a tree. Then, soon after, he jumps towards a building away from the college. All his actions were very soft. It was like he hadn't made any noise at all. On top of a tall building away from the college, Adam sighed to himself in relief. Then he picks up a phone and searches the list for the contact named My Princess. Adam coughed a little to disguise that he was relieved about something and clicked to call his daughter. The phone rings a little, and soon his daughter answers. Father, Leona spoke into the phone. Oh, my little princess. He spoke with a satisfied smile on his face. Have you discovered something? Leona asked impatiently. Adam's smile breaks a little, but he replies yes. Unfortunately, he's not from your family. He didn't react to my pressure like a newborn wolf would, and I also didn't feel the connection indicating he was from my pack. Oh. Hearing his daughter's disappointed reaction, Adam quickly speaks. But don't worry. The wolf's transformation may be dormant. After all, just like you, he could just wake up on a night with a full moon. He tried to cheer her up. You're wrong, Dad. Leona sighed. Adam pretended not to understand. He won't become a member of my pack. The wolf's venom has been neutralized by the vampire's venom. Victor is a vampire now. Of course, Adam knew this, but he still reacted in surprise. Oh, is he a vampire? Why do you think that? Well, the changes are obvious, and he's married to the Snow Clan's heiress and Clan Folgers. Oh? I didn't know that. Adam was really surprised this time, and he started to think. Wolf's venom wouldn't be an easy thing to neutralize, especially my daughter's venom. But if two noble vampires bit him, it makes sense that wolf venom would be neutralized. What do we do, Father? Leona asked a little apprehensively. Adam wakes up from his thoughts and responds, we don't do anything. Why? As Victor isn't a wolf, he's not our problem anymore. He's just a leech now. Adam spoke in a definite tone. But Leona tried to say something, but Adam cut it off and spoke seriously as his eyes glowed a little bright blue. I forbid you to get involved with him. Father! Leona yelled angrily. Leona, who do you think you're talking to? Lower your voice, Adam growled. He likes to spoil his daughter, but he wouldn't forgive the insubordination. You understand. I will dash. Leona stops talking, and Adam can hear that she was sobbing and crying a little. His eyes slowly began to lose their intensity, and he sighed, You fool, I don't forbid you from treating him like normal friends. What I forbid is that you get involved in leech affairs. That's not our problem. Our rigth. Leona spoke in a tone like she was crying. I'll hang up. Class is starting, Adam said, sighing again. When Adam hangs up, Leona wipes her tears away with the toilet paper and sighs. She was currently in the service area, where she usually works taking care of animals. You're good at acting, Edward spoke in a neutral tone. He heard and saw everything Leona did. He even saw her start to sob and cry out of nowhere. Shut up, Leona said. Then she snorted proudly. I learned acting watching K-drama. Only our dad would fall for this horrible act, Edward said as he rolled his eyes. Leona pouted and looked at her brother. What do we do? Nothing, Edward spoke. Then he continued. Victor turned into a vampire, so what? I've known him since he was little. I know he won't act like an emo and say we're enemies or some shit like that. Just treat him normally. You're right. Leona spoke a little unsurely. Did you want him as a member of the family? Edward asked. Leona's face turned a little red when she heard her brother's question. I understand. He nods his head several times as if he understands something. You've known each other since you were a child, and you had a similar situation. After all, you and he were sick. He was always kind to you, and because of that, you're in love with him. You expected him to become a wolf so you could get close to him and develop this relationship, right? This is the basic plot of any romance anime. Slowly, Leona's face began to turn completely red with embarrassment. Soon Edward continues. If you followed the plot of an anime, you would approach Victor, and you would start dating him. After all, the childhood friend always wins in this type of plot. Edward makes a serious face and an exaggerated gesture. But you didn't expect a Yandere to show up and steal the man you were in love with. He points to Leona, who had a completely red face. And if one Yandere wasn't enough, he got 2 Yandere. And when we talk about Yandere, there's only one thing we can expect. Trouble. And since he has 2 Yanderes, he has double problems. Leona started to clench her fist angrily and looked at her brother like he was a dead man. Seeing his sister's face, Edward stopped joking and looked at her with a puzzled face. Don't tell me that's it. Soon Edward's face turns red with anger. I forbid dash. He tried to say something, but before he could finish the sentence, Leona made a move. You fucking idiot. She made a fist and attacked Edward's stomach. Ugh dash. Edward didn't expect this sudden attack, so he flies towards the wall as a fist imprint appeared on his stomach. Humph, Leona huffed. You're wrong. I'm not in love with him. I treat him like a precious friend. Stop making up lies. I just didn't want him to fall into those leeches' traps. Soon she turned and left the room where she was. Cough, cough. Edward coughed a little as he came out of the wall that had the silhouette of his body and says, She's getting stronger at a very fast pace. And it's only been 3 days since she woke up as a wolf. Soon, she won't be a fragile girl anymore. She'll turn into a gorilla. Nighttime. Initially, I just wanted to check if I had a weakness to water like some types of vampires I've seen in movie theaters, but when I found out I didn't have a running water weakness, I started swimming and felt great. I ended up getting carried away, and I swam until night fell. Thankfully, there wasn't a swim club class today, so I was able to enjoy the pool by myself. I was currently in the men's locker room using a towel to dry off. As I used the towel to dry myself, I spoke out loud. The only weaknesses I have are the blessed items, and that I need to be invited into a stranger's house. I look at my reflection in the mirror and can't help but notice something. Did I get taller? As I stared at my reflection in the mirror, I could momentarily see the figure of my former self, a thin 21-year-old young adult with pale skin and sapphire blue eyes. I compare my current body with my old body from my memories, and I can't help but say something. It really feels like I went through an experiment to create super soldiers. The previous thin, sickly-looking man suddenly turns into a tall, muscular man. The vampire's bite forces the host's body to evolve into its peak state. I muttered aloud, I was 175 cm before I turned, and now I'm over 180 cm. I wonder how much I will have grown when I stop evolving. My wife Violet said it all depends on my potential. I stopped thinking about bullshit and quickly finished drying myself with the towel that was in my closet. When I'm done drying off, I look in my bag and see the outfit I asked June to prepare for me. I nod my head satisfied, and I look for the clothes I was wearing. When I'm done dressing, I walk out of the men's locker room and carry my bag behind my back. The moment I step out of the locker room, I start walking down the silent corridors of the college. Now that I've stopped to think, shouldn't the building security be patrolling? I hear someone's footsteps approaching in the distance. I look back and see a man approaching with my vampire vision. I turn off my vampire vision, and soon my world goes back to normal, and I look at a man who has a smile on his face. He had blonde hair, blue eyes, and he behaved politely. He looked like those average princes. The man suddenly disappeared and reappears in front of me. He takes my face in his hand and throws me into the wall. Boom! I felt dizzy and felt bits of concrete stuck behind my hair. While confused and alert at the same time, the man laughed contemptuously and said something. Yes, indeed, a little strong, but not enough to be by her side, at least with your little strength. Do you think you deserve to be by her side? Especially with you being a mere plebeian. This will never work. Just stay away from her, otherwise I or someone else will kill you and your family for her. That's a friendly warning. Feel honored that you can hear so much from someone noble like me. Next time, I won't be so kind. He laughed out loud and looked at me haughtily. His expression was like a Rottweiler looking at a kitten. I coughed up blood on the floor. I also felt my head regenerate. I looked at the man with a neutral expression while my eyes changed to red. Did he just threaten my family? Is he a fool? My head wasn't working well, but I was sure what I heard. What do you say? How about you just disappear? If you do, I'll let you live. He spoke with the same smile, as if he were the most important being in the world. When you disappear, I'll be free to conquer her. I cracked my neck and snapped my hands. That hurt for the first time I spoke. My head was clearer now. He disappears from my vision and reappears beside me again. I couldn't react to him as he held me by the face and punched me in the stomach. Ha ha ha, so weak, so weak. Why did she choose you? You were so weak. It should have been me. I coughed up blood on the floor, and he started hitting me again. As he hit me, I looked at him, seeing his arrogant face and expression that was saying, I am the king of the world. I can't help but think. Disappointing. All I feel about this man is just disappointment. Is that what a noble vampire is? A creature that has an ego the size of the planet and thinks they're the center of the world. I'll be honest, I was excited to fight a noble vampire. I was eager to fight and crush them beneath my feet. I thought I was going to have a good challenge. But this is just disappointing. Why? Why am I like that? Why am I so disappointed? I don't know where this pride of mine comes from. I'm just a newborn. It's only been 3 days since I turned into a vampire. But why? Why am I just so disappointed? Why am I not angry with him? After all, he insulted my family, the most important treasure of my life. Something is wrong with me. If it was with Juan, I would have attacked him already, but why is it that, with this man, all I feel is disappointment? Why? Crack! Crack! I bite my tongue and refuse to scream in pain as he broke my arms and threw me off the 3rd floor. I feel the glass shatter behind my back, and as I fall from the 3rd floor of the building, I gaze at the full moon with a bored look on my face. I felt pain all over my body, but for some reason, I felt numb. It was a strange experience. It was like this body wasn't mine. I look at the blonde-haired man, and when I see his face, the clouds of doubt in my mind have cleared a little. When an insect insults you, do you feel something? I ask myself the question. The blonde-haired man comes down from the 3rd floor and walks towards me. Soon my smile grows. No, you don't feel anything. In my mind, even though he is stronger than me, he didn't deserve my attention. I don't know where my pride comes from, but I've felt that way since when I turned into a vampire. Same with Juan. I thought he was a worthy opponent, but the moment he lowered his head and backed away like a dog, I lost interest. I hate him, but that's just my sadistic side and ego speaking. I wanted to see him humiliate himself one more time, and, in doing so, I would feel satisfied, but I had also lost interest in him when he proved to be just an unwilling servant. I had understood something new about myself, but I still had questions on my mind. I don't understand. Why am I like this? I don't have the experience of a veteran warrior. I'm not a martial arts genius. But why am I like this? Why? Why? I questioned myself several times in my mind while looking at the full moon. I felt strange. It was like this body wasn't mine. It was like these emotions weren't mine. I felt trapped. I felt like a wild animal that was trapped and tamed. I don't understand. Maybe I'm just freaking out? Yes, since I was turned into a vampire, my emotions are very chaotic. I get angry a lot easier. I get attached a lot easier. I hate easier. I feel sadistic pleasure in defeating my enemies, and I feel happy when I step on them with my feet like insects. Yes, maybe something is wrong with my head. As I looked at the full moon, I heard the vampire's footsteps approaching me. He looks at me. Today, you're going to die, and I'm going after what belongs to me. I ignored this man's words. What was his name again? He looked strong, but what was his name? Well, I guess he's not important after all. Suddenly, I remember the words of my teacher, Adam. What do you think, Victor? Why don't you loosen up a little? How long are you going to hide behind this mask that you created yourself? When I remembered those words, I felt like all the doubts I'd had the moment I faced this man were cleared up. Ha! I felt like laughing out loud. Ha ha ha! I laughed madly as I placed my left hand, which at some point regenerated, on my forehead and lifted my hair up. It was the first time I had laughed with all my being, and I finally understood why I was feeling weird. All this time, I was holding back. All this time, I wore this mask because it's the right thing to do. After all, everything that's weird is excluded from society. I wore a mask to hide the real me. When did I start using this mask? I asked myself, confused. What are you laughing at? Shut up and die. Oh, I remember now. It was that incident when I was a kid and I got lost in the woods. Hey Vic, can I call you at #$%? I heard a child's voice in my ears. The voice sounded like static, and I couldn't remember who it was. I suddenly feel a warm feeling coming from my stomach. It was such intense heat, and it was furiously asking me to let go. I flash a smile full of sharp teeth and let that heat run wild. Boom! A pillar of flame suddenly came out of Victor's body. Ah! Violet, who was lying in one of the underground rooms she had asked to build, moaned aloud. Sasha, Natalia, and Maria, who were in the same room watching television, just looked at Violet confused. Violet twitched her legs and lay down on the bed. Her eyes were blood red. Her breathing was ragged, and she was mumbling. Darling, darling, darling. She looked like a broken record that kept saying the same word as she twitched her legs. Lady Violet? What's going on? Oh my God, Natalia said as she approached Violet. But the moment she saw the erotic face Violet was making, she was surprised. Sasha approaches Violet, looks at her friend, and when she sees the liquids that were leaking from Violet, she can't help asking, with her cheeks a little red with embarrassment, what is happening? She stuttered a little. Darling, darling, I can feel it inside me. She responded as she squirmed. Huh? Sasha didn't understand. Natalia, do you know something? Sasha asked. Natalia just shook her head no, and continued looking at Violet with the same neutral expression. But Maria, who was close to Natalia, could see that the maid had a small smile on her face. Where is Kagaya? Sasha asked as she looked around. She is in the shadow of Lord Victor, Natalia replied, and continued. She is protecting him. When Sasha was about to say something, she is suddenly surprised when Violet gets up from the bed. I need to see my darling. She spoke with a slightly red face. First, you should change your clothes. Sasha spoke in a tone that didn't allow refusal. Violet looks down and sees the mess that was her dress. She nods her head and then disappears towards the bathroom. I'll go ahead. Something must have happened to my husband. Sasha spoke with her cheeks, showing a little embarrassment. She wasn't used to saying the word husband. Soon, she too disappears. The only thing normal people could notice was a silhouette of a woman. Sasha's maid Maria also disappears and follows Sasha. What is this? What is it? I asked myself as I looked at the pillar of flames coming out of that newborn's body. This should have been an easy job. I eliminate the arrogant newborn and take the woman I so want, but what is this? Wasn't he just another newborn who was lucky enough to gain Violet's attention? I understand Violet. She must have gotten bored and found a human to treat as her toy. This happened many times in the past, and female vampires have always done that. Wasn't he just that? Wasn't he just a toy? But why does he have this power? Why does he have these flames? How can a newborn have the power of the Snow Clan? Who is this man? Suddenly, Corneliu heard the roar of a beast. Hi. Corneliu fell to the ground as he stared at Victor in fear. Victor's appearance had changed. His clothes had disappeared because of the heat, and he was practically naked, but that was not noticeable because of the flames that were covering his body. Victor's entire body was covered with fire. His ears became sharper, looking like an elf. The sclera of his eyes that was once white changed to a dark black. His iris turned blood red, and the pupil of his eyes looked like the pupil of a dragon. His smile grew abnormally, and Corneliu could see all of Victor's sharp teeth. He could see that Victor's teeth had also undergone a change. Victor's old teeth that looked like small sharp teeth grew and seemed to have changed into the teeth of a demonic beast. Hey, Chow, how do you have that power? Only vampire counts have this power? Who are you? It's hot, but I feel good. I feel released, but I feel angry. A growing fury was building inside my body, and I couldn't control that fury. All my senses were improved. I could see, feel, and hear everything around me. It was an uncomfortable feeling. I look at the blonde-haired vampire. When he looks at me, I see he started pissing himself in fear, and when I saw that, my sadistic smile grew on my face. I wanted to humiliate him. I wanted to see him in more despair. I wanted to hear his screams. I took a step forward, and I noticed that when I did, the ground I stepped on started to catch on fire. And I also noticed that the moment I took a step forward, the vampire's entire body shook with fear. With a little thrust from my legs, I appear in front of the blonde vampire and grab him by the neck. He started screaming in pain, and hearing those screams filled me with sadistic satisfaction. I realized that my hand hurt him a lot. I squeezed his neck more, and I saw his neck burning with fire. Let me go. Now let me go. I did what he wanted. I released him gently. Of course, he probably didn't like my gentle side very much. I held his throat in my hand and pulled. Those were his last screams, and soon he couldn't speak anymore. When I saw that noble vampire kneeling with his throat destroyed, when I saw him look in fear, I felt my whole body tremble in pleasure. I wanted more. I wanted to see him in despair. I wanted to see him humiliated. I took a step towards the noble vampire to continue playing with my new toy. I suddenly smell an intense smell of blood and turned my face towards the scent. I knew that smell. I don't remember where, but I did. Soon I felt an intense pain in my chest. It was like someone was slowly squeezing my heart. My heart hurt so much. I knew something was wrong. I utilized my vampiric vision, and soon my vision turns to a world of blood. I ignore all the humans in my field of vision, and I focus all my senses on the scent of blood. Soon, I see the vision of several humans covered in golden energy, surrounding two female vampires. One female vampire was lying on the ground, and she looked hurt, and the other female vampire was kneeling while holding her arms. Then I focused my attention on the bite mark of the vampire who was kneeling. I felt my heartbeat like it was calling her. Then I understood something. Ruby. I focused all my strength on my legs, and I jumped towards the two vampires. Seeing Victor leaving, Corneliu did not understand what had happened. In an area that should have been full of walking civilians, a group of hunters was surrounding two female vampires. The first woman was wearing a maid dress. She had white hair and pink eyes, and was holding the wound in her stomach. "Lady Ruby, please run away," she said while coughing blood on the floor. The other woman had red hair and green eyes. She was holding her arm, which was injured by a deep cut. Hearing what the maid said, she looked at Luna with a neutral gaze. Though anyone who knew Ruby well enough could tell she was worried about Luna. "Silence, maid," she ordered. Luna flashed a gentle little smile and was silent. But inside, she was trying to plan something so Ruby could run away, but as usual, she couldn't think of anything. She coughs up blood on the floor and looks at the woman who attacked her. She was wearing a professional white jacket and looked like a Japanese woman. White skin, black onyx eyes. She also looked tall for a Japanese woman. standing at 175 centimeters tall. Then she heard the Japanese woman say, "Ruby Scarlet, heiress of Clan Scarlet. You are very brave to walk around without a guard." "I don't need bodyguards," Ruby spoke dryly, and then she continued, "All beings in our world know the consequences of provoking my mother's wrath." She touches her wound with her fingers, then brings them to her front. When she sees the blood on her finger, she thinks, "How many years has it been since I was injured?" I remember the last time it happened was when I was 3 years old. I remember that a country disappeared from the face of Earth that day. When the older hunters heard Ruby's words, they shivered a little in fear, but when they looked at the Japanese woman, they were more relieved because they saw that the woman wasn't afraid. Indeed, the woman spoke in agreement with Ruby's words. All beings in our world know the legends of Lady Scathack Scarlet. She noticed that her subordinates trembled in fear when they heard the woman's name and shook her head, inwardly disappointed, then continued. "The strongest female vampire in the world. A vampire over 2,000 years old. She has been walking the earth since Jesus was born into this world. Crazy, psychopath, and is considered by the church to be a monster we should never provoke. Because the moment she is provoked, an incident like what happened 18 years ago can happen. An incident that reminded the world how vampires can be terrifying creatures. The moment that incident is mentioned, all the hunters look at Ruby as if they've made the worst decision of their lives. The only one who doesn't feel that way is Carlos, the hunter who attacked and killed Sasha's maid. He looked at Ruby with anger visible in his eyes. Because of you, an entire country has disappeared from the face of Earth." Ruby looked at the man with neutral eyes. "So what?" The man could not believe what he heard. "Don't throw your hypocrisies at me. How many people has the church killed in the name of its God? How many wars has the church caused because of its God? Shall I recall the incident of the Saint of Orleans Jeanne d'Arc? They were sinners. Oh, so it's okay to murder thousands of people just because you said they were sinners?" As expected, the hypocrisy of the church has no limits. Ruby snorted in disdain. "Don't act like you care. You're just a monster that sucks blood and kills for fun." Carlos yelled angrily. Carlos' companions just looked at him shocked. They were puzzled by Carlos' attitude. Normally, he wasn't a man who got irritated easily. The Japanese woman looked at Carlos. His mate's kidnapping affected him so much. Ruby chuckled softly in amusement. "What are you laughing at?" Ruby didn't respond. She just looked at Carlos, and everyone could see that her eyes had changed to blood red. "I've never killed a human soul in my life. I've always drunk blood donated by humans to hospitals. I used my mother's money to buy them for me." Carlos opened his mouth in shock. He looked at the Japanese woman. When he saw the Japanese woman gently waving, he was totally disbelieving what he was doing. "Did I attack someone innocent?" "Wrong. She is not innocent. She is a vampire. A vampire is not innocent." Ruby's smile grew unnaturally as her sharp teeth began to show. "The hard truth to swallow is, you hunters just hunt me because I'm a vampire. I'm a different species. For us vampires, all humans are just cattle, and for humans, vampires are their natural predators. That's just it. That's the law of nature. We need blood, and because of that, some of my species actively hunt humans. And to defend against this natural predator, you were created. This whole situation was created by decisions made in the past, and this is just the natural course of things. Although we have created the ritual to control our bloodlust, for the church it doesn't matter. They just seek to eliminate us." She snorted in disdain. "God, motivations, explanations, and even why you attack me today are just excuses for this unchanging truth. We are the predators, and you are the prey, but unfortunately, over time, the situation has evened out, and it has become the contest of two predators. One that will only end when the vampires, or the humans, disappear from the face of the earth. And I can guarantee you, we will be the winners." Ruby finished speaking with a big smile on her face that showed all her sharp teeth. All the hunters looked at Ruby in shock. When the Japanese woman saw this, she said, "As expected, you also inherited your mother's madness. I don't think we should let you live." "Crazy? Me? PFFFF. Ha 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 ha." Ruby laughed lightly. The Japanese woman just raised an eyebrow in doubt. Ruby stopped laughing and spoke with a big smile on her face. Mizuki, I'm the sanest vampire you'll ever meet. Are these your last words? The Japanese woman asked. Ruby doesn't respond. She just turns her face and looks to the side and shows a shocked expression, but soon a small smile appears on her face. She turns and looks at the Japanese woman. You guys are so fucked. Huh? The woman didn't understand, but when she felt something approaching at high speed, and when she heard the noise of buildings being destroyed, her instincts screamed. Step back now, she ordered, and as experienced hunters, they quickly listened to the woman's orders. They didn't even dare to question. Soon a being covered in fire falls from the sky in front of Ruby. When Mizuki saw the monster's appearance in front of her, all her instincts screamed danger. She was on full alert. Seeing the monster's appearance, she remembered the information she'd received from the church's pope. Remember, Mizuki, Romanian vampires are on a completely different level than what you destroyed in Japan, especially the Count-class vampires. These vampires are like humanoid weapons of mass destruction, and if that wasn't enough, they have a kind of transformation that taps into the true nature of these vampires' powers. If you meet a vampire like this on your quest, you must step back immediately. After all, you have not yet received the baptisms to become my general. Back? I'm sorry, but I won't carry out this order, Mizuki thought with a small disdainful smile. On guard. Use level 3 enchantments. Gentlemen, a Count-class vampire is in front of you. Prepare to die if necessary, she yelled as she pulled a fan from her pocket. Yes, ma'am. She opens her fan and speaks in a neutral voice. Susanoo, Japanese god of the sea and storms, bless my allies with the protection of the seas. Suddenly water began to appear at the feet of Mizuki's allies, and slowly this water began to wrap the hunters in a protective layer. And soon, this water turned into the armor of the ancient Japanese soldiers who fought in the Sengoku period. God, bless my fists so I can get my revenge. Carlos spoke while being covered by Mizuki's armor. His fists started to be covered by golden energy. Soon all the hunters began to cast spells similar to what Carlos did. The creature looks at Mizuki with a smile on his face that showed all his sharp teeth. The hunters felt their bodies shiver when they saw the creature smile. But before the hunters could do anything, the creature lost interest in them and turns towards Ruby. Violet? Ruby spoke confused, but when she looked at the creature's face, she spoke in shock. Darling? What happened to you? And how did you get this power? Ruby tried to get up, but she couldn't. She looked at her wound with an annoyed look. This is taking too long to heal. What is happening? I should have resistance to the energy used by the church. Ruby looks at Victor's face with a stoic expression. She had several thoughts running through her head right now. Why is he here? Why does he have access to this form? I'm glad he's here, but I'm worried about him. He's not strong enough to fight a slayer like Mizuki. We must get away. But I'm glad he's here. I don't want him to die. When Victor put his eyes on Ruby's wound, he felt his heart clenching in pain. He wanted to roar in rage. He was almost losing control of his own body. But as a last show of stubbornness, he managed to stay in a state where he understood everything as if it were a dream. He was awake, and at the same time he was sleeping, but there was only one thing he was sure of, only one thing he wanted to do now. I will kill them. Suddenly all of the hunters felt as if the world had lost all color for a few seconds. Everyone could feel the killing intent so strongly that they forgot to breathe for a few seconds. Victor turns and looks at the hunters. When the hunters looked at Victor, they felt their bodies suddenly grow heavy. Fear. The purest feeling of human beings. That's what they were feeling now. They couldn't breathe. They couldn't move. It was like their bodies didn't want to obey, and they just froze. What is it? A slightly younger hunter asked while shivering. Despite having been hunting vampires for a few years, he's never come across a vampire like this. Cece calmed down. A hunter spoke while stammering a lot. Victor's eyes started to look around. He seemed to be going crazy every moment. He looked at all the hunters as he opened and closed his fists several times. Mizuki looks at him neutrally and thinks, he is weaker than I imagined. So she puts the fan in front of her and spoke in a low voice. Tsukuyomi, give me the peace of the night in the moonlight. White energy focused on Mizuki's fan, and then she waves the fan, and this energy travels towards all of her subordinates. And, as if it were magic, everyone started to get calmer. Everyone felt inner peace, and they didn't feel fear anymore. But the enchantment didn't last long, because Victor suddenly made a move and appeared in front of a hunter. He opens his mouth full of sharp teeth and bites the hunter's neck. Save me! Save me, dash! The hunter couldn't scream anymore, because soon he had turned into a dry mummy. It was like he lost all the blood in his body. Victor stops biting the hunter, and when he lets go of his head, the hunter's entire body disappears into ash. Even the hunter's blood that splashed on him disappeared without a trace. This demonstration made the hunters fearful. The only ones not affected were the more experienced hunters, all thanks to Mizuki's enchantment, and because they had seen something similar in the past. He destroyed my armor so easily. Mizuki couldn't help but comment in disbelief. Was I wrong in my judgment? She thought confused. Then she ordered, "This monster's body is very hot. If you don't have high-level protection techniques, don't come close, or you will turn to ashes." Carlos. Yes, ma'am. Carlos runs towards Victor and punches him in the face. Victor looks at the fist in his face, and soon he smiles like he's not impressed. Monster, don't laugh at me. Carlos attacks him again, but it wasn't working. He couldn't hurt Victor's body. Victor grabs Carlos' bald head. Carlos feels his flesh burn as Victor holds his head. Victor runs towards another hunter and holds them by the head. The friend who was next to this hunter tried to cut off Victor's hands, but the golden sword only scratched Victor's skin. Victor looks at the two heads he was holding as if they were watermelons. He flashes a big, distorted smile. Carlos, realizing what Victor intends to do, quickly uses a defensive spell. Victor hits the heads of the two men together. Crack! Sounds of broken bones were heard by all the hunters nearby. Carlos managed to survive the attack, but the hunter who was his subordinate had his brain blown out. Victor grabs Carlos by the neck and throws him at the other hunters with all his strength. Ugh! Catch me! Carlos screamed when he realized he couldn't organize his center of gravity. He started to speak an incantation, and soon his body was glowing golden. Carlos' subordinates nod their heads and catch Carlos's body. Before Carlos can do anything, he sees a giant ball of fire flying towards them. The fuck? Boom! Seeing those fireworks and hearing the screams of the hunters, Victor's sadistic smile grew in satisfaction. We must flee. A hunter spoke in fear. He swallowed his saliva and yelled, "We cannot fight this monster. Are you going to run away from these demons? We must kill them." A more fanatical hunter spoke. Fuck it. I'm not going to die over bullshit like that. When this hunter was about to flee, he hears Mizuki's voice. Is that the attitude of a hunter? If you're not prepared to die, you shouldn't be in this job. She spoke in obvious contempt. She hated that hunter's cowardly attitude. She ignores the useless men. This monster is strange. He's strong, but he has the feeling of inexperience. He's just using his power directly. Let's try something. Bishamontan, give it to me, a weapon to destroy my enemies. She spoke in a neutral tone, and her fan began glowing red. Then, suddenly, her fan turns into a 2-meter-long odachi. Mizuki lifts the odachi with her right hand as if it were not heavy and puts it on her shoulder and displays a predatory smile. Everyone could feel that the air around Mizuki changed. If before she looked like an elegant woman, now she looked like a wild beast. Mizuki takes a talisman from her pocket with her left hand, closes her eyes, and holds the talisman in front of her. Abe no Semai, lend me your wisdom to defeat this Oni. The talisman disappeared in blue light, and soon that same light began to cover Mizuki's body. When she opened her eyes, a magic circle was carved in them. Mizuki crouches a little, and slowly the sword blade starts to be covered in blue energy. She bends her knees, and with a thrust, and flies towards Victor like a missile. When she got close to Victor, she brandished the odachi diagonally. Realizing the threat, Victor suddenly disappears in front of Mizuki and appears beside her. Then he attacks her, trying to rip her head off. It's useless, she said, smiling while blue energy glowed in her body. Victor didn't understand what happened, but he suddenly screamed from a pain he'd never felt in his life. He screamed like he was a beast being wounded. "Victor!" Ruby cried out in concern when she saw the cut on his chest. Victor holds his bleeding chest. Slowly, the fire that was covering his body began to weaken considerably. Realizing this was an opportunity, Mizuki flashed a maniacal smile and brandished Odachi again. This time she wanted his head, but before her sword ripped off Victor's head, a huge wall of ice appeared in front of her. Mizuki's Odachi cut through the ice wall easily, but soon she realized the monster was no longer in front of her. She also heard a woman's neutral voice. She turns her face and sees a woman wearing a maid outfit. She looked into the woman's blood-red eyes and realized she was a vampire. "Sorry, but I can't let you kill my master. I haven't had enough head pats yet." Seeing the darkness covering the maid's feet, Mizuki spoke. "The Kuroyami clan? Oh, it's been a while since I heard that name." Kagaya flashed a small smile. Mizuki looks around and sees that the monster was being hugged by Ruby. The monster had a much weaker fire than before, and she also saw that Ruby was using her ice ability to close the wound she caused the monster. "When I destroyed the noble vampires of Japan, I looked in their records that talked about a clan of vampires who could control the shadows. They were the best assassins in Japan. A clan of vampire ninja controlled by a noble vampire who had friendly relations with Toyotomi Hideyoshi." She looked around a little further and noticed that Ruby's maid had disappeared. "Where is she? They kept records about us? What a surprise. I thought they had forgotten us." Kagaya spoke in an emotionless tone. Mizuki was looking at the monster with dangerous eyes and with a big smile on her face. With the previous confrontation, she can understand that the monster was inexperienced in fighting. He had great power, that's a fact, but he didn't know how to control it. Power and not knowing how to control it in a fight against a hunter is deadly. "I need to eliminate him. A monster like him can't stay alive. I shouldn't miss this opportunity," she thought with determination. Cough! Victor coughed up black blood on the floor, and soon the fire that covered his body began to slowly die, and eventually his transformation was undone. He was back to normal. "The poison is taking effect, good, but this is only temporary. This poison is not strong enough to kill the noble vampires. I need to eliminate it." Mizuki thought. "Darling? Are you okay?" "Darling?" Ruby tried to talk to him, but Victor's eyes were unfocused as if he were lifeless. Seeing the black blood on the floor, Kagaya looked at Mizuki. "What did you do?" "That is not something you need to know." Mizuki spoke as she positioned herself. She placed the Odachi on her shoulder again and flexed her knee. She then pulled a talisman from her pocket. The talisman began to glow, and soon she spoke as she threw the talisman at Kagaya. "Kenzo fa odor." A wave of flame erupted from the talisman and flew towards Kagaya. Kagaya looked at the fire neutrally approaching. "Oh my, this is something rare these days." Kagaya's body began to be covered by darkness, and soon 2 daggers appeared in her hands. She cuts the fire horizontally, and when the fire died out, she saw Mizuki running at high speed towards her. Kagaya's darkness began to grow. Slowly, the darkness began to leak towards the ground, and soon all the ground around her was covered with blackness. It was as if Kagaya had created a territory just for her. When Mizuki enters Kagaya's territory, suddenly thousands of black hands start coming out of the ground and heading towards Mizuki. Tisk, annoying, Mizuki's sword starts to be covered in thunder, and with a diagonal swing, she eliminates all of the shadow hands created by Kagaya. "Where is she?" Mizuki said as she looked around. "You hurt my master. That is a serious crime." She heard a voice in her ear. Mizuki tried to run away, but she couldn't. As soon as she felt a dagger piercing her heart, her face took on an expression of disbelief. It was as if she didn't believe she would be eliminated so easily. Cough! She coughed up blood on the floor. Kagaya pulls the dagger out of Mizuki's heart, and when she goes to cut off her head, she hears an ancient and powerful voice. "Enough!" A blue power left Mizuki's body, and Kagaya quickly disappears into the shadows and returns to Victor's side. A guardian spirit. Kagaya stared in shock as she looked at the old man who was floating around Mizuki. The old man waves his fan in his hand, and soon the wound Kagaya inflicted on Mizuki began to regenerate at high speed. He nodded satisfied and looked at Kagaya with a neutral look. Oni, you use very sneaky techniques. Thank you, master, Mizuki said gratefully. Foolish disciple, you come to these foreign lands, and the first thing you do is fight without knowing the enemy? I'm disappointed. Did you forget what I taught you? The old man ignored Mizuki's thanks and began to lecture her. Ugh. Mizuki put a hand to her ear and tried to ignore her master's words, but unfortunately, she could hear the master's sermon in her mind. Kagaya looked at the old man, trying to find some characteristic that would let her recognize him as a historical figure. She knows that spirits are heroes who have fought and fallen in the past, and through magic, they can be summoned. She also knows that this is a technique of invocation that was lost a long time ago. Seeing the pentagram symbol on the fan in the old man's hand, she understood and discovered who it was. Hey, come on. The old man hears Kagaya's words, stops lecturing his disciple, and looks at Kagaya. Then he opens his eyes a little. When Kagaya saw the magic pentagram that was similar to the magic circle Mizuki had in her eyes, she understood that she had guessed right. Oh, do you know me, Oni? And to think that my legends have spread to this foreign continent dash. When the old man was going to continue to say something, he heard the voices of two women. Darling, Violet, Sasha, and Maria arrived and looked at Ruby holding Victor, who had an unfocused look on his face, as if he was lifeless. When Victor heard Violet and Sasha's voice, his blue eyes sparkled a little, and he tried to move his hand, but he couldn't. He felt like his body was paralyzed, and he couldn't move anything. He could understand and hear everything around, but could not move. Violet jumps towards Victor and starts checking him out. Seeing that he was in a very bad state, her eyes started to darken in madness. She looks at Mizuki and says, "You did it." Mizuki was going to try to say something, but she was interrupted by Violet's angry outburst. "You did it." Fire started to come out of Violet's body. The atmosphere around her started to get suffocating. Violet was slowly losing herself in anger. "Calm down, Violet. We need to get away and heal our husband," Ruby spoke in a cold tone. As if by magic, the fire around Violet disappeared, and her eyes sparkled with clarity. She looked at Victor and bit her lip in frustration. "I should be by his side. I'm going to kill that bitch." Suddenly, everyone heard an explosion as if lightning had hit the ground. "Oni, what are you doing?" The old man asked neutrally as he looked at Sasha, who attacked Mizuki, who defended herself with her odachi. Sasha didn't respond. She just looked at Mizuki with hate in her eyes. Lightning started to crackle around Sasha, and soon she disappeared in a flash and attacked Mizuki again. Ugh! Mizuki wasn't able to attack. Sasha was too fast, so she just assumed a defensive position with her odachi and protected the vital parts of her body. The spirit looked at everything with interest. He didn't seem to be interested in interfering in the fight and continued watching everything with curiosity shining in his eyes. Sasha took the dagger from her legs and started making small cuts on Mizuki's body. The dagger couldn't pierce Mizuki's body. "Give up, Oni. You can't penetrate my disciple's defenses. You're quick, but you're not strong enough." The old man spoke in a neutral tone. Sasha's eyes flashed with more hate when she heard the old man's words. She hates the woman for leaving Victor in that state, and she hates the old man for underestimating her. Sasha's body began to glow yellow. "Sasha, don't lose your cool. If you use this power for too long, you will be incapacitated," Ruby exclaimed. Sasha yelled angrily, "I don't care. I'm going to kill this bitch." Boom! Lightning struck Sasha's body, and slowly her body began to change. Her ears began to grow and become elongated like an elf. Her teeth began to grow and become sharper. She grew a little higher, and soon she turned into a female version of the transformation of Victor. The only differences were that her body was covered in yellow lightning, and that her powers seemed to be concentrated in her legs. "Another Count-class vampire," Mizuki said as she walked away from Sasha. For a moment she looked at the spirit with a hateful look. She knows that sadistic old man will only help with something if she is about to die. General, i.e. Mary. Carlos, who had burns all over his body, screamed when he saw Maria from afar. Maria looked at Carlos for a moment. Her eyes gleamed with the desire to go back to him. But the master's order was absolute. She couldn't do anything. Ruby looked around and noticed that the hunters Victor had fought and not killed were returning to recovered states. She looked at Mizuki and saw that the woman was being healed by some strange technique she was using. The hunters had the upper hand. Mizuki is a general with a focus on support and melee combat. As long as she's alive, we won't be able to eliminate them all. Not to mention that old spirit is still around. We have to retreat. Ruby analyzed the situation calmly. Sasha, hearing Carlos' voice, loses interest in Mizuki and looks at Carlos with eyes longing for revenge. Ruby for the first time got angry and yelled, "Sasha, get a grip. Decide what's most important to you now. Your revenge or our husband?" Sasha turns to face Ruby. She looks at Victor lying on the floor like he's dead and bites her lip in frustration. But soon she makes a decision. She disappears from where she was and appears next to Victor. The only thing the hunters could see was a trail of lightning. Wah dash! I dash! Mizuki looked around and saw that the normal hunters had started to fall to the ground with their necks cut. All of them, who couldn't react to Sasha, were killed by her daggers. The only ones who survived were those hunters who had high-level defensive enchantments, like Carlos. "We must back off," Sasha spoke as her transformation was undone. Seeing that Sasha was breathing a bit heavily, Ruby thought, she still doesn't control this transformation completely. She was too reckless. "Oni, do you think you're allowed to leave this place?" The old spirit asked as he placed a fan in front of his mouth. Mizuki picks up and places the Odachi on her shoulder, and speaks while holding a talisman with her other hand. "Kirin, the messenger of the gods, the Onis are in my sight, and I need your help." She positioned herself to run and attack the vampires, but stopped when she saw her master motioning her to do nothing. Ruby looked at the old spirit with a smile on her face. "We don't need your permission to leave this place. Get your dick out of your ass. You're just a dead man." Then she looks at Sasha and Violet, as if indicating for them to do something. The two women smile, as if they understand something. "Oh!" The old man opened his eyes, his expression shifting to disdain. "You think dash? Just shut the fuck up, you trash. Why don't you go back to the hole you came out of? Didn't your mother teach you to be obedient?" Violet spoke angrily. Then she flashes her disdainful smile. "Oh, I don't think she can do that. After all, she was busy satisfying her customers. She never could teach you anything." The old man's face began to distort in anger. "You dash. Now!" Ruby spoke. Kagaya suddenly disappears into the shadows and enters Victor's shadows. Soon after, Ruby creates a huge ice wall. Violet creates a big fireball and attacks the wall. Boom! An explosion occurred when the fireball hit Ruby's ice wall. Soon an intense fog was created around it. Seizing the chance, Sasha grabs Violet and Victor on her shoulders and moves fast, leaving lightning trails behind. Ruby does the same to Maria and runs a bit after Sasha. Children's tricks. Carlos screamed and punched the air, and with the pressure made by Carlos' fist, he cleared the entire area that was in the fog. When he looked around and saw that there was no one, he shouted angrily. "They fled!" Ignoring Carlos' anger, Mizuki looked at her master. "Because you stopped me, I couldn't kill them." Abno-samai just sighed in disappointment and looked at Mizuki. "Foolish disciple. You still need to train more." Mizuki didn't understand why her master reacted like that, but she didn't think too much. She was used to her master's weirdness. "What do we do, General?" A hunter who survived asked. Mizuki looks around, and when she sees the mess they've created, she says, "We must retreat, recover the bodies of the fallen hunters, and let's go back to our temporary base." "Good decision," her master praised. While the hunters recovered the bodies of fallen combatants, Mizuki's master was in deep thought. Abno-samai is the old man's name. He is a unique exorcist at the time he was alive. Even after he died, he became a powerful spirit, but even this powerful exorcist who fought countless Oni when I was alive, he was afraid of someone. That Akoma is still alive, huh? And she had a daughter? I think the world will end in this era. The moment this old exorcist appeared to save his disciple, he could immediately feel the gaze of a beast watching him from afar. And, from that moment, he knew he could not interfere or severely hurt the red-haired woman. He didn't want to die permanently, after all. He had a lot of things he wanted to do. In a building several km away, 7 people could be seen. They were wearing a black suit that covers the entire body and an all-black mask that hides the facial expression of these individuals. And in front of these individuals was a woman who was wearing black jeans, a black V-neck t-shirt, showing a lot of her H-cup-sized breasts under her shirt, without hiding much skin, especially in the region of her huge breasts. She also wore a short black suit jacket. "We need to eliminate that newborn. He broke the rules." One of the 7 beings who were wearing a mask spoke in an unrecognizable voice. They seemed to be using something to disguise their voice. "By using his power openly, he's exposed us. It must be eliminated." 3 masked men agreed to eliminate the newborn vampire, but the remaining 4 just remained silent and looking at the woman with a cautious look. After all, they knew very well the temperament of this red-haired woman. "Fu-fu-fu." The woman smiled in a gentle way while her gaze glowed madly. She seemed to be watching something from far away. The 3 masked ones stopped talking and looked at the woman apprehensively. They didn't want to provoke the woman. Slowly, her gentle smile began to change into a crazy smile. "Ah, interesting. Interesting. My daughter, my beloved daughter, whom I carefully raised as a child, found a husband." Suddenly, she turns and looks at the 7 masked beings. "I heard that the first prince's son likes to travel the world. I wonder if I should pay him a visit?" The 6 masked beings started to sweat with fear under the mask. They didn't know how to interpret the words of this crazy woman. Is she asking a question? Or is she threatening the life of the first prince's son? They didn't know. That's why they don't like dealing with this woman. The 7th masked man, who was calmer, said hurriedly, "We understand each other. We don't know anything, and we're not going to do anything." "Huh? But I asked a question." The woman spoke with a confused face, but her crazy smile never left her face. The masked man's body trembled in fear. We know. Lady Scathack is always right. Don't worry, no one will know about what happened. We will leave all responsibility for this situation to Lady Scathack." "Are you going to leave the responsibility to me?" The woman's eyes began to glow dangerously. "Hi." The masked man screamed like a little girl and said, "I mean, we were never here, so this incident never existed." The woman's eyes stopped shining, and soon she smiled in a gentle way. "Thanks for the hard work. You guys can go now." "Yes, ma'am." The masked man who shouted quickly responded, as if he were a soldier who responded to the superior. And soon the masked man disappears. The remaining 6 masked men just looked at the whole situation without words. They didn't understand anything. "What are you waiting for?" "Shoo, shoo." She spoke as if she was talking to a dog. The masked 6 awaken from their stupor and quickly disappear. Seeing that the masked ones disappeared, she spoke with a gentle smile. I think I will visit my daughter." But soon her expression changed to a serious face. "But first I must sort some things out." February 5th. 2 days after Victor, Violet, Sasha, and Ruby clashed with the Hunters. Night. Current location: the Vatican, headquarters of the Inquisition organization. In the skies over Vatican City, a red plane was flying at an altitude of over 30,000 feet. "Lady Scathack, we've arrived." The pilot of the plane informed the woman, who was lying lazily with a photo album on her face. The woman opens her eyes, takes the photo album from her face, and puts it on the table beside her. "I'll be back soon, Ruby," the woman spoke, smiling lovingly as she looked at the photo album, which started to freeze slowly, and soon it was in a pure ice chest that looked quite sturdy. The woman stretches a little, and when she does, her big breasts threatened to come out of the blouse she was wearing. But even with that tempting sight, the pilot showed no reaction or looked at the woman's breasts. The woman smiled sensually and licked her lips teasingly when she realized the pilot showed no reaction to her beauty. This pilot attitude towards her was a good thing. She didn't want to change pilots again. The 101 previous pilots made the mistake of looking at her with lust, and today they are buried 6 feet underground. As a vampire who has been alive for over 2,000 years, she considers herself an old-fashioned woman. Looking is okay, but looking with lust is a big no. Because of that, she has killed many men in the past. Well, she admits she's a bit cruel. She likes to tease men, and when these men get lost in lust, She castrates the men and then kills them. In the end, this was all just a hobby for her, a sadistic joke for her to have fun when she was bored. Scarthatch cracks her neck a little. Let's pay a visit to my friend. Her face took on a confused expression. What's his name again? Kratos something? I think it was Zeus. Well, it's not important. She shrugged as if it didn't matter. Tony, keep flying over Vatican airspace, the woman ordered. My name is Lucas, ma'am. The man sighed tiredly. When he saw the woman's red eyes glowing a little, he quickly nodded his head. Yes, Lady Scarthatch. He accepted the order. Good. She smiled with a cold little smile. She opens the plane door, smiles a predatory smile, and with a little kick of her feet, she jumps into the air. Let me get this straight. A man with long golden hair and golden eyes speaks with a tired face. He puts his hand on the brow of his face and says, I gave the order to search and capture the vampire who stole the finger of Saint Mary, a sacred artifact, right? The man had the expression, he said. I hope you're kidding. You're kidding, right? Please tell me you are kidding. Yes. Mizuki, who was called back to the Vatican, replied. She had just finished reporting everything that happened in the incident she was involved in 2 days ago. The man's expression crumbles. He looked depressed now. He sighs once more and presses a little button he has under the table. Then he leans back in his chair while waiting for the person he just called. And before long, just a few seconds later, someone knocks softly on the door and walks in. Your Holiness. Alexander, the man spoke in a neutral tone that held a lot of respect. Alexander, the man with golden hair and golden eyes, looked at the man who just walked in. He looked 25 years old with brown hair and brown eyes. Standing at 180 centimeters tall, he was wearing white priest robes. General Kurtz, can you raise the alarm, please? Kurtz looked at Alexander with a neutral gaze, and without questioning said, What's the alarm level? Your Holiness? Level 6. Is that demon coming? He asked in a neutral tone, but Alexander could see he was hiding his fear from him. Yes. Alexander nodded, then continued as he stared at the ceiling. Actually, she's already here. His eyes seemed to glow golden for a moment. A sonic boom was heard by everyone present, and then they heard an explosion as if something was falling to the ground. Boom! The impact was so big that the structures around the impact started to shake a little. It was like a small earthquake. What? What is it? Mizuki leaned a little against the wall as she exclaimed in surprise. Alexander gets up from his chair, and for the first time, Mizuki saw how tall this man was. He was 195 centimeters tall, and his toned body couldn't be hidden by the white priest uniform he was wearing. Soon the man walks smoothly towards the window. Mizuki, do you know what happened to the former general you took over for? He asked in a gentle tone. He died? But I don't know the details of death, she said. Yes, he died. He was a good friend, Alexander said a little sadly. He opened the window and looked at the red-haired woman who had a huge smile on her face that showed all her sharp teeth. The woman was standing in a huge crater. She gently jumped out of the crater, and the moment she puts her feet on the ground outside the crater she was in, the whole area around the woman was frozen. It looks like the woman created her own territory for herself with more than 5 kilometers of pure ice. Scat-hack, Mizuki swallowed a little saliva. Indeed, Alexander nodded. This demon killed the former general. She was shopping at the Vatican, and when our former general tried to harass her, she killed him and left me a letter of complaint claiming that I needed to improve the policemen that protect the Vatican. Mizuki opened her mouth in shock. She even thought she heard Alexander's words wrong. Do you understand what I mean? Alexander asked as he looked at Mizuki. What? She stuttered. Alexander sighed and explained, You hurt this demon's daughter. What do you think she came here for? Mizuki closed her mouth and said nothing. After all, she had thought it would be a good opportunity to kill Ruby, who could be a very dangerous vampire in the future. She had even thought that Scat-Hack's strength was overestimated. After all, she wouldn't dare attack the Vatican alone, right? Destroying a third-world country is easy for any power in the world. After all, the country that Scat-Hack destroyed in the past didn't have soldiers like the Vatican, but fuck! If she had known this information about the former general before, she wouldn't have tried to kill Ruby. Your Holiness? 2 voices were heard, and soon 2 men entered the room where the Golden Man was. General James, and General Leonardo. Prepare for battle, Alexander spoke in a gentle tone as he opened the window and jumped out of the room. General James, a dark-looking man with black hair and black eyes wearing black priest robes, was a short man at only 170 centimeters tall. James looked out the window when he saw the woman who had created an ice throne and sat on it while waiting patiently. He looked at Mizuki. "What did you do, woman?" "Apparently, I provoked a monster," Mizuki spoke in a sarcastic tone as she walked towards the window. "Great, just great," James said in a sarcastic tone. Then he jumped out the window and followed Alexander. "Don't interfere in the battle, young one," Kurt said neutrally. "Yes, I know." Mizuki didn't mind the way Kurt spoke. After all, she knew these men were older than they looked. Mizuki looked at the last man in the room. He had red hair and bright blue eyes, and like the three generals and the Pope himself, he looked like a 25-year-old adult. "Ha, she's as beautiful as ever. Too bad she's a demon," Leonardo spoke with an arrogant smile. Then he followed the two generals. "Hello, Kratos. It's been a while since we've seen each other. I think the last time was 2 months ago." Scathach asked the golden-haired man. The man sighs and says, "My name is Alexander." How many times has he repeated that same phrase over the years? "Oh, I'm sorry," she said. Then she continued as she crossed her legs elegantly. "You know how being old is. You forget things as time goes by." "You don't look old to me," Leonardo said with a smile on his face. But soon his expression darkened to pure fear as he felt Scathach's sheer killing intent. The moment she saw he was scared with just that, she loses interest. She looks at the man like she's looking at an insect. Scathach likes talented people, and with just one look, she could tell this man had no potential. He stinks of garbage. To her, this man wasn't even qualified to breathe the same air as her. "Silence, dog. I'm talking to your owner." "Why you dash?" He tried to say something again, then, immediately, felt danger coming from around his neck. Boom! Just as the general tried to say something, Scathach moved and tried to decapitate the man. "You're crazier than usual, demon," Alexander said as he held Scathach's wrist. "I said silence. He must learn to listen to his elders." She spoke with a big smile on her face, then disappears again and sits on the ice throne she created. She crosses her legs elegantly again, while keeping a sensual smile on her face. Leonardo just stayed silent while sweating a lot. He was just going to lose his life, so without any effort, he looks at Scathach and thinks, "Crazy bitch, you've gotten stronger." She complimented him with a smile that showed off her sharp teeth. "Indeed, I've had a lot of time to train." He spoke with the same gentle tone. He didn't seem annoyed that she was trying to kill his general. 1900 years. Time passes quickly, huh? She spoke with a bit of nostalgia. She seemed to miss the past. Alexander was silent. He had the same feeling of nostalgia that the woman has. As a human who gained eternal youth, he too had to go through many difficult farewells. "I've always had a curiosity," Alexander said. What is the story of your life?" Alexander asked something he always forgot to ask, and the moment he asked that question, all three generals looked at Scathach with curiosity twinkling in their eyes. "Life story, huh?" She spoke as if thinking deeply. Then she smiled and said, "I don't have anything interesting to tell about my life. But once I met Jesus." "How was he?" After the initial shock, Alexander asked, showing more interest than usual. The three generals will open their eyes in shock. "He was a silly and boring man," she spoke with a smile on her face. The three generals clenched their fists in anger, but Alexander's expression remained the same. Soon Scathach continues. "I met him once in the past. He wasn't the saint you believe. He was a normal human. He shits, pisses, and eats. He was a man with great potential. I wanted to train him in the past." The four men opened their eyes in profound shock. A vampire training Jesus? Is this some kind of prank? That's what the generals were thinking. "I even asked him to be my disciple, but he refused. He preferred to help people than to grow stronger. He was a good-hearted man. Unfortunately, his good heart was what led to his death." She spoke with a disappointed face. She still thinks that if Jesus trained enough, he could have given her a good fight. The four men remained silent. The three generals had various emotions running through their bodies. They didn't know how to react to this revelation. Although Scathach didn't care about their existence, He didn't deserve that death, Alexander spoke in a melancholy tone. Indeed, Scat-Hack agreed. A moment of silence passed between Alexander and Scat-Hack. Soon Alexander sighs again. He doesn't know how many times he sighed that day. I'm sorry for what my subordinate did. She will be punished. Please can you go back as if nothing had happened? Scat-Hack's smile grew and said, It's impossible. I warned the world in the incident 18 years ago. The message was clear. Touch my daughter, and you felt my anger. You didn't give me any choice then. Alexander spoke as his eyes began to glow golden. Slowly, a golden aura began to cover his body. My dear, she smiled sensually as she licked her lips, and soon her eyes began to glow blood red. You had no choice from the start. February 9th. For days after Countess Scat-Hack, Scarlet attacked the headquarters of the Inquisition organization. Current location, underground of the house where Victor lives. Ugh, my head was hurting so bad. I put my hand on my head as I opened my eyes. I am at home. I spoke out loud, confused, and sit up in bed. Ugh. I place a hand on my head again, as soon as I start to remember what happened. I fought that blonde man. Then I went to save Ruby, and I was paralyzed by that woman's poison. I see. And to think that a vampire would be affected by something like poison, that woman must have used something special? Hearing someone's breathing in their sleep, I look to my right side and see a sight that surprised me a lot. A woman with long red hair, big breasts, and a curvaceous body was sleeping the same way she came into the world. Our Ruby, I stuttered a little. I was taken aback by this fantastic sight. Hearing my voice, she seems to have woken up from her sleep. She opens her eyes sleepily, looks at me with her green eyes, and says with a gentle smile, Darling. Hearing her voice, my heart began to pound frantically. My throat went dry, and I felt an uncontrollable urge to bite her neck. I bite my lip and try to control myself. It seems my bloodlust was stronger than before. How long did I sleep? She flashes a seductive smile, stands up a little, and then starts to crawl towards me. When she started to crawl like that, I could see her two white rabbits that looked soft and fluffy, even though they looked fierce. It was such a beautiful sight that it made you want to squeeze and pet those white rabbits. I look into Ruby's eyes and seeing her seductive expression, I couldn't help but be captivated by the sight. She was so beautiful. She looked like a succubus that was trying to seduce me. Slowly, she climbs onto my lap, sits on my crotch, and wraps her arms gently around my chest, and lays her head on my chest. When she did that, I could feel her two melons on my chest. She had the biggest ones I've seen so far. I could feel her steady breathing on my chest. As soon as she pulls back a little and looks at me, I could see her eyes were blood red. I bring my hand up to her face. She is surprised for a moment, but she accepts my advances, puts her face in my hand, and I soon start stroking her face. She looks at me with desire shining in her eyes. Darling, I can't wait any longer. She spoke as her breath started to come in short pants. She seemed to be wanting too much. Understanding what she's up to, I hold back my bloodlust and show my neck. The moment I showed my neck, she opens her mouth and bites me. I feel my blood being sucked by her, unable to take it anymore. I wrap my arms around her waist, and soon I open my mouth and bite her collarbone. Ah, she moaned as she stopped sucking my blood. As soon as she wrapped her legs around my waist, I also felt something wetting the shorts I was wearing. Her blood was so delicious. The taste was something like high-quality ice cream, the icy feeling that her blood gave me. It was an addictive feeling. Darling, darling, darling. She kept repeating the word like a broken record as she hugged me tighter. Then she bit me again. Suddenly, my world starts to change, and I was in that abandoned building again. It all happened the same way I saw it in Sasha and Violet's vision, but now I could see the sequel. I could see what happened the moment I bit Sasha. Violet created several fireballs around her. Die, bitches! When I stop biting Sasha and look at Violet, I notice that I seem to be in a trance-like state. I don't seem to have control of my actions, so I speak in a neutral tone. All blood belongs to me. Suddenly, a dome of blood appeared in front of me and surrounded me and Sasha. Boom! An explosion happens when Violet's fireballs come in contact with my blood. Darling? Oh my God! What have I done? Violet started to despair. But when the smoke from the attack disappeared, she sighed in relief. I could see she was surprised too. Apparently, I managed to protect Sasha and myself with that blood dome. As soon as the blood dome disappears, I slowly start to close my eyes and gently fall towards the ground. I seem to have passed out. Darling, Violet squealed in concern. She approached me with supernatural speed and held me gently. I'm sorry, darling. She looked like she was about to cry. Calm down, Violet, Ruby said as she held her neck with a neutral expression, but I could see her face was a little troubled. It was like she didn't believe what just happened. Calm down? I almost killed my darling because of you bitches. Violet exploded again. Don't be unfair, Violet, Sasha said as she held her neck with a worried expression. Remember that you were the one who called us for help? Indeed, Ruby added. Then she speaks in a cold voice. Calm down, and tell us what happened. Why are we marked as his wife? Violet's face takes on a guilty expression when she hears what Sasha says. But when she hears what Ruby says, she gets angry again. She takes a deep breath and seems to try to hold back her anger. So she sits down on the floor and puts my head in her lap. I think Darling's blood altered the ritual, Violet begins to explain. Darling, you have a rare blood type, Rh null blood, she said while stroking my hair. It seems that by doing that, she managed to calm down more. The golden blood? Ruby exclaimed in shock, but soon her expression changed to a stoic one. How is he still alive? This blood is considered a delicacy for vampires. Victor should look like a slice of very tasty meat with this blood type, but why don't I feel anything coming from him? She spoke as she put her hand to her lips. This blood type paints a gigantic target on the owner. People with this blood type rarely go beyond 15 years of age. After all, a vampire can smell this scent from kilometers away. After Sasha's initial shock because of Victor, she added, Violet has stopped stroking my hair and looks at the two women with lifeless eyes. I protected him. For 16 whole years of my life, I protected him from threats. I hired witches to hide his scent. I killed the vampires that went after him. I made this place my territory solely to protect him. When Sasha and Ruby looked into Violet's eyes, they felt shivers all over their bodies. Ruby looked at Sasha, who looked back at her. Then they both nodded. They seemed to be talking in code. Violet looks back at me and continues. I protected him for 16 years. I protected him until the day he would become mine. My beloved darling, she spoke with loving eyes as she caressed me. But soon her expression distorts into hate. But just me taking my attention away from him for a few seconds. Slowly her voice began to get heavier, and soon killing intense so great that it made the air heavier began to leave her body. It was just a few seconds. And that was enough for a mangy dog to try to mark him. How dare they? My darling. Do they dare try to steal my darling? Unforgivable. Boom. Fire started to shoot out of Violet's body in an uncontrolled way. The ground around Violet started to melt, but this fire didn't seem to be hurting me. Soon Violet's gaze turns to Ruby and Sasha. Do you guys want to steal my darling from me too? Sasha now? Ruby yelled. Sasha's body starts to crackle with her lightning. Soon she disappears in a yellow trail and picks up Ruby like a sack of potatoes and runs away from Violet. Boom! An explosion of fire happened. Violet tried to attack Sasha and Ruby again, but the two women had already fled. Suddenly my vision changed. I was in a place far from the building where I was transformed. I look around and realize I was in a park. She's crazier than usual, Sasha commented in a neutral tone as she stared at a building that was on fire. Looking at the burning building, I wonder how my beloved wife managed to hide this incident from everyone. Ruby sighs. She's pissed at the whole situation. We should stay away for a few days. Violet should calm down now that she's with Victor, Sasha spoke. I'm worried about something, Ruby commented. Then she added as she looked at Sasha. Do you think Victor will accept Violet? You know her personality. The two women fall into an uncomfortable silence. If Victor doesn't accept Violet, I think this time she's really going to freak out, Sasha spoke with a worried face. Yes, Ruby sighed. Anyway, I'm going back home. Luna must be worried, Ruby said. Sasha nods and says, see you later, Ruby. Suddenly the world shatters like a crack in a glass. I open my eyes, and I realize as I come out of that memory, I feel a weight on my right arm. I look to my right side and see Ruby, who is lying down while leaning on my arm. I seem to have fallen asleep for a few minutes again. Feeling my gaze, she opens her eyes and looks at me with a seductive smile. "Welcome back, darling." I look at Ruby, and I feel like I've known her for several years, just like Violet and Sasha. I could understand her completely. I knew what kind of person Ruby was. A gentle woman on the inside, but one who always has a cold mask on the outside. And at the same time, she was very aggressive when she wanted something, though she is easily embarrassed when confronted directly with pure feelings. A simple woman who had to live hiding her feelings. Sometimes she just wanted to let go, but she couldn't. I dash. When I go to try to say something, Ruby gets up on the bed, approaches me, then she kisses me. Our tongues play with each other for a few minutes. Then she stops kissing me and licks her lips sensually. "You're way more aggressive than Sasha," I commented with a small smile. She smiles gently. "Wrong, darling. I'm not an aggressive woman." I look at her curiously. "I am a decisive woman." She places her hand on my chest and caresses the spot where I was injured by Mizuki, but thanks to vampire's regeneration, the spot that Mizuki cut me in is unscarred. "You saved me, and in doing so, you awakened my desire to have you for myself." Her smile changes to a flirtatious smile, and I always run after what I want. "Oh, and what do you want?" I asked with a smile. She brings her face closer to mine and speaks with a possessive face. For a moment, I saw her eyes darken. "I want you for myself. I want you to be my darling." I felt my entire body shudder in pleasure when I saw Ruby's expression. "You already have me," I said, smiling as I kissed her lightly. Then I get up from the bed and pick up Ruby like a princess. The moment I got out of bed, I felt an incongruity. Things around me seemed to be lower than I was used to. Did I grow taller? I see Ruby pouting, and this sight made my heart melt. She was so cute. I put her on the bed and kneeled down. "I need to see Violet," I said while stroking her red hair. After what I saw in Ruby's memories, I have a huge desire to meet my wife. I see Ruby's face turn a little red. She nodded cutely. She was very cute. Just like Sasha and Violet, Ruby had a charm of her own that I loved a lot. Sasha was a strong woman who was very weak with showing affection. She was easily embarrassed, although she has a possessive side that I love very much. Violet, my beautiful ice flower, was a woman direct with her feelings. She was possessive and always tried to harm anyone who approached me, and she always put my safety first while forgetting her own safety. She was a person I love. Stopping to think now, my 3 wives are beautiful vampires. I really am a very lucky man. I spoke in a low tone, but I realized that Ruby heard me, and her face turned a little red with embarrassment. I laugh a little as I do my best to ignore Ruby's 2 white rabbits. I walk to the wardrobe, but soon I remember my favorite maid. Kagaya, a Japanese-woman-looking maid, stepped out of my shadow. "Lord Victor, I'm glad you woke up." Kagaya spoke in a neutral, emotionless tone, but I was sure I could see her eyes shining for a moment. I look at Kagaya smiling. I open my arms and say, "Do your magic." Her black eyes change to blood red, and she flashes a small smile. As expected, Lord Victor is the best master. Her body is covered in darkness, and soon she passes through my body, and a few seconds later, I've already changed my clothes. "Thank you, Kagaya," I said as I stroked her head. I felt her body tremble, and a small satisfied smile appeared on her face. I also noticed that she looked shorter than usual. I think I really grew up. "Shall we go, darling?" I hear Ruby's voice. I look at Ruby, and I see she's wearing a simple blue skirt, big black tights, and a red shirt that could barely hide her breasts. Seeing that I had been staring at her breasts for a lot longer than I intended, she smiled seductively. "What are you doing, darling?" My face turns a little red, but soon I understand something. She's playing this game. Huh? I swallow my shame and say, "I was admiring how beautiful my wife is. I really am lucky." Suddenly, Ruby's face turned red with embarrassment. She turns her head away and hides her face with her hair. I display a small smile. "Come on, honey." Ruby nodded. I walk to the door, and when I touch the door, I see several green magic symbols appearing. For a moment I was confused, but I just shrugged like I didn't care. When I walk through the door, I hear. Now with the latest news. In the Vatican, there was a serious explosion caused by terrorist attacks. The terrorists placed several new bombs created with liquid nitrogen throughout the Vatican. As you can see from the images, the damage caused was immense. More than 70% of the Vatican structures are destroyed. Liquid nitrogen bomb? Can't they come up with a better excuse? I hear the voice of a woman I don't know. I walk a little and see that the woman was sitting on the couch while watching the news. The woman turns off the television with the remote and turns her head towards me. When our eyes meet, my body froze. I feel like I'm in Alaska. My whole body was cold, and I felt like I was looking at a wild beast that could kill me at any moment. I couldn't move. She displays a wild smile that, at the same time, was seductive. You finally woke up, my son-in-law. You finally woke up, my son-in-law. Did you enjoy sinking your fangs into my daughter's neck? Suddenly I feel my whole body go numb. Fear, that's what I felt. For the first time in my life, I felt the purest feeling of fear. My heart was beating wildly. My instinct screamed to run, but I couldn't. My body was paralyzed. I could feel my whole body in a cold sweat as I looked at the woman in front of me. I thought, a monster, a real monster was sitting in front of me. I swallowed hard. I could feel, yes, I could feel with all my being that this monster could kill me at any moment. In front of her, I was just an insect. In front of this woman, I was just a newborn that she could easily step on. I clenched my fists tightly. Fear? Yes, I was scared, but I refused to be paralyzed. I bit my tongue hard and tasted the blood, but I didn't care. The pain made me regain control of my body. I felt an irritating feeling in my heart, a feeling that told me not to bow my head to anyone. My pride won't let me. But besides this irritating feeling I had in my heart, I had another feeling screaming furiously. I look into the red eyes of the woman who was smiling at me, and I display a smile so big that my face distorts unnaturally. Oh, her smile grew like my smile. A strong warrior was in front of me, an opponent to fight. I'm excited. My whole body is screaming in euphoria to fight her. I could feel it, but I knew an unchanging truth. I was too weak to have a fight that will satisfy my desire. And that irritated me. That frustrated me. And Mother, when did you arrive? The woman ignored her daughter's question and kept looking at me. This is really a shame, I said, disappointed. Why is this a shame? She asked in curiosity. I'm too weak to fight you. That's really a shame, I sighed at the end. I could feel the whole atmosphere in the room freeze unnaturally, and everyone in the room was looking at me with a stunned face. The woman's instinct to kill disappeared, and soon she started to laugh. Ha! I didn't understand why she was laughing. I looked to Ruby for answers and saw that she had a shocked face as she looked at her mom. She didn't seem to understand why her mom was laughing. Suddenly, the woman stopped laughing and got up from the couch. Then she looked at me again. Interesting. She displayed a distorted smile. I like you. Huh? Thanks. I didn't understand why she said that. I looked at the woman in front of me more closely. She looked like a more mature version of Ruby. She has pale skin, blood-red eyes, long red hair that reaches her waist, and a curvy body that her clothes couldn't hide. She had the most enormous breasts I've ever seen. She seemed to have bigger breasts than Ruby. I think it was H-cup. She was shorter than me by a few inches. NOVLB //JNN. I don't know how tall I am now, but I seem to be bigger than before. She was beautiful. Beautiful would be a little enough compliment to describe all her beauty. A hot beauty, a crazy beauty, a woman who would make any man go crazy with just a simple gesture. But she wasn't just that. She was a warrior, a bloodthirsty warrior, a warrior who had some screws loose in her head just like me. That's the impression I had of her. She approaches me and starts looking me up and down. Oh? It looks like your evolution gave you more potential than I expected. Interesting. For a moment, I saw her eyes glow red. Ugh, I hear Violet's voice. This bitch. One day I'm going to kill her. I withdraw my attention from the woman, look at the couch, and see my beloved wife with an irritated face. I ignore the woman in front of me and walk over to Violet. Heh. Her face distorted a little, but I didn't care. I stop in front of the couch and see Violet, who was wearing only a black nightgown. She was mumbling in a distorted tone about how she was going to kill that woman who was Ruby's mother. I sit down on the couch and pull Violet onto my lap. Kya? She squealed in surprise. Darling? She looked at me confused, but soon her face filled with genuine joy and hugged me possessively. Darling, 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 I missed you, I said honestly as I hugged her. I felt Violet's body shake, and she looks at me with a tearful face. I was worried that you wouldn't wake up anymore. I wiped the tears from Violet's eye, and I hug her tighter and lay her head on my chest. Sure, I'm here, okay? While Violet and Victor are in their own world, Sasha approaches Ruby and speaks in a low voice. He just ignored your mother? She commented in disbelief. Yes. Ruby looks at her mom. She was hoping her mom was pissed off, but to her surprise, her mom had a happy smile on her face. Seeing that smile, Ruby's body shivered. She knew her mother very well, and from what she understands of her mother, she only shows that smile when she finds something interesting. Luna! Suddenly Scat Hack spoke. Why yes? Luna squealed in surprise. Luna, who was silent along with Natalia, Maria, and Kagaya in the corner of the room, runs to Scat Hack's side. Thanks for contacting me. You did a good job. But now I want you to do something for me. Scat Hack whispered something in Luna's ear. Yes, ma'am. Luna responded, like a soldier responding to his superior. Then she ran out of the room. When Ruby heard her mother's words, she looked at Luna with a look that said she would give her punishment for having a big mouth. Huh? Violet, who was in her world with Victor, suddenly looks at Scat Hack, who yelled loudly. Bitch, begone? Why are you still here? The room will stink of antiquity, shoo shoo. Yeah, looks like you want to get punished again, brat? Scat Hack's eyes sparkled a little. Violet's body shuddered, and she hugged Victor tighter. Darling, I'm being bullied. She doesn't learn, huh? Doesn't she understand that your mother is vindictive? Sasha commented as she looked at Violet. A bit annoyed, she thought. She's taking advantage of the situation. Well, she's Violet. She doesn't have any sense, Ruby added. I look at Violet and see her face saying, I want to be spoiled. She was so cute I couldn't resist. I put my face close to her and kiss her. Humph! She looked surprised for a moment, but as soon as she kissed me again, our tongues began to battle for dominance. Slowly, my bloodlust exploded. I felt my teeth start to change and also felt my eyes shift to blood red. Ugh! I stop kissing Violet and look at the two voices. As soon as I see Ruby and Sasha with red faces, I could clearly feel what they wanted. I could feel it from our connection that got so much stronger than before. Eat! I spoke in a low voice, but strangely my voice resonated throughout the room. Oh! Scat Hack displayed a curious smile. Suddenly, Sasha disappears and appears at my right side. As soon as she opens her mouth and bites my neck, I felt my blood drain. Violet puts her face on the other side of my neck and licks me. Then, she bites me too. Let go of me! I heard Ruby's furious scream. When I look at Ruby, I see my wife is being held by her mother. Interesting, she said. She was completely lost in the desire for blood. I suddenly feel a desire to be full, and that desire has taken over my actions, and that desire was affecting my wives too. Violet, Sasha, and I look at Ruby's mom. Release! We speak in unison. The woman's body trembled a little, and then she lets go of Ruby. Huh? The woman exclaimed in surprise. She looked at her hand and realized she wasn't holding her daughter anymore. Ruby disappears and appears on my left side. Darling, darling, soon. She bites my collarbone. The moment she bites me, I feel complete. When the desire to feel full has been sated, my bloodlust exploded again. I couldn't think of anything. I was very thirsty, and I just wanted my wife's blood. I open my mouth and bite Violet's neck. Ah, darling da. Seeing Victor feasting on the blood of his 3 wives, Scat Hack's smile grew distorted. Kagaya, explain to me everything that happened from the moment that Victor was turned, she ordered. Kagaya approaches Scat Hack. She looks at the woman for a few seconds as if thinking about something. Then she makes a decision. She is Ruby's mother. She has a right to know the truth. It all happened the day Violet turned Victor into a vampire dash. Kagaya began to explain in a neutral tone all the events she knew. Hearing everything that happened, Scathacka's smile just grew and grew. When Kagaya finished explaining everything that had happened since the moment Victor turned into a vampire. "What's his blood type?" she asked curiously. "RH null blood. The golden blood." Ha ha ha. She started laughing like she was crazy. Kagaya just looked at the woman, wondering if this madwoman was right in her head. And to think that history would repeat itself with my daughter? Ha ha ha. She looked very happy for some reason. Countess Scathach knows about something? She stopped laughing for a moment and looked at Kagaya with a slight smile on her face. Who knows? I'm quite old. Maybe I'm just crazy. Kagaya's face twitched a little. She didn't expect her to respond like that. Scathach exhibited a soft smile on her face, took a deep breath, and let the air out of her lungs. It's been a while since I laughed like that. When was the last time? I think about 500 years ago. Kagaya, seeing the woman's H-cup breast sway as she made this simple gesture, just clicked her annoyed tongue. Scathach walks slowly towards Victor with a smile on her face. She sits on the sofa that was next to the one that held Victor and his wives. She crossed her legs sensually and spoke with killing intent leaking from her body. "That's enough. Have some kind of respect for yourself. Doing that in front of everyone is inappropriate." The instinct of the four exploded, warning of danger. They quickly broke apart and rose from the couch, prepared to fight. The reaction is fast, but not good enough. Mother, wipe your mouth, daughter. How inappropriate." Ruby's face turns bright red, and she quickly licks her lips. "I can't believe I did this in front of my mother." Sasha Fulger, I hear your mother lost her vampire count title on some stupid bet, as expected of her. Yes, as expected of her. Sasha nodded in disdain as she licked her lips. Violet Snow, I heard your father woke up. Do you intend to come home? Scathach asked. I'm not. My house is next to my darling. Violet spoke as she hugged Victor. I looked at Violet and smiled kindly, then patted her head. Seeing the goofy smile on her face, my heart melts in acuteness. I look at Kagaya. Kagaya, dear magic? Understanding what I mean, Kagaya nods, and then disappears into darkness. Then she covers Violet's body in darkness. Like magic, Violet's outfit has changed from a nightgown to an outfit that looks like a cosplay she always wore. Done. Good job, Kagaya, I said as I stroked Kagaya's head. Her body shook a little, and she turned her face away. Soon, I stop petting Kagaya and sit down on the couch again. Violet sits on my right side, Ruby sits on my left side, and Sasha, who was a little embarrassed about the whole situation, sits next to Ruby. And Kagaya was behind me along with Natalia and Maria. I look at the woman. We haven't introduced ourselves yet, right? I display a gentle smile. My name is Victor Walker. Nice to meet you, mother-in-law. Again, I feel the atmosphere around me tense up, as if I've said something wrong. The woman displays a dangerous smile and licks her lips. Nice to meet you, Victor. I am Ruby's mother. My name is Scathach Scarlet. Now that we've introduced ourselves, let's talk about important matters. I keep smiling. Oh, she looks curious about what I'm going to say. I want to ask your permission to be with Ruby. The woman's smile suddenly disappears. Darling, this is too fast. Ruby looked at me with fear evident on her face. Yes, darling. You must talk to my mother first. Violet spoke jealously. Idiot, that's not what she's talking about. Read the room. Sasha yelled at Violet. N/O/vel/B//in.C//om. Huh. Violet was confused. Question marks started appearing around me, and I was confused why they were reacting like that. Brat, don't you understand your situation? Ruby's mother spoke in a neutral tone. I understand my situation, I said as I looked at her. I married your daughter, and I didn't ask your permission for that, right? Indeed. That's it. She looked at me with a stunned expression. Don't worry, I intended to do this with each of my wives. I commented with a small smile. She flashed a small smile. What are you going to do if I don't allow you to be with Ruby? Mother. Silence, Ruby. Her eyes glowed red for a moment. Why, yes, Ruby recoiled. Answer me. She looked at me again. The answer to that question was simple. I don't intend to do anything. Ah, ah. Ruby and her mother exclaimed in unison. I continue with a slight smile on my face. At the end of it all, your opinion on this matter doesn't matter much, I commented honestly. Brat dash. I interrupt. Ruby is already married to me. What I'm doing here is just a formality. Whether you allow it to happen or not, it doesn't matter anymore. I look at Ruby. All that matters is Ruby's willingness. If she wants to be with me, then I'll make it happen. Darling. Ruby spoke with a red face and a small happy smile on her face. It was pretty obvious she wasn't against it. Brat, you're talking too loud for someone who doesn't have the strength. Scat spoke in a venomous tone as her killing intent seeped from her body. She looked quite annoyed. I look at Scat and I explain yes. I'm weak now, but sometimes you can't solve some situations with brute force. Heh. She flashed a sneer. If I kill you now, you can never be with my daughter. I saw Sasha, Ruby, and Violet's faces distorted in anger for a few seconds. Think with me? If you kill me now, what will happen? I asked in a neutral tone. I would bring my daughter back home. That's all. What about her bloodlust? You know the ritual? She can handle it. After all, she is my daughter. If I can handle this bloodlust, she can too. Oh, she lost her husband? Come to think of it, I don't know much about my wives' families. The only one I know a little better is Sasha's family. Naive, I commented. Huh. Her face was distorted. You are naive. Your way of thinking is very naive, I said. Then I continue. Ruby isn't you. If I disappear, what guarantees she won't go crazy from bloodlust? She was silent as she looked at me. And even worse, what guarantees she won't hate you? I asked, smiling a little. Huh? She put on a confused face. She would hate me? Her own mother? That is impossible. Why is it impossible? You've already lived a long time, right? From the way you speak. I can say that, I said and added. Then you must know how easily a child can hate their parents. She bites her lip, and I see her eyes glow blood red. That's why I said, it doesn't matter if you approve of Ruby and me. In the end, I'll still stick with Ruby. I spoke neutrally and added, smiling happily. I just became something irreplaceable for Ruby, and you can't do anything about it. Indeed. Scat lowered her head a little, her bangs hiding her eyes, and soon she started biting her nail. I could feel Ruby shaking a little as she held my hand. I looked away briefly and saw that Sasha was very alert. It looked like she was ready to do something if the situation called for it. Darling, this is dangerous. You've said too much, Violet spoke seriously in a low voice. I just smile and pat Violet's head. I look at Scat again. Scat Scarlet. She looks at me, and when I see her I gleam. For a moment, I feel my whole body tremble with fear and excitement. But then I display a big smile that shows all my sharp teeth. Wouldn't killing me be a waste? Waste? The moment I saw you, do you know what I felt? Finally, I decided to be honest. She kept looking at me. Afraid. I feel scared, but I also feel disappointed and frustrated. Oh! She displayed a big smile. I get up from the couch and walk slowly over to Scat. I kneel on the floor and look into her red eyes. I touch it lightly and caress her face. A strong opponent was in front of me, but I didn't have enough strength to face it, so I couldn't satisfy my desire to fight. This is really frustrating. Her red eyes that were glowing seemed to lose intensity. Then her smile grew in a distorted way that showed all her sharp teeth. This smile just made me more excited, but this is really disappointing. Indeed, I agreed. I stopped stroking her face and pull away. When I look at my wives, I just saw them looking at me shocked. Even Natalia, Maria, and Kagaya, who are always stoic, were looking at me with their mouths open. Why are they reacting like this? I thought. When I sit down on the couch again and look at Scat, I was taken aback by the gentle expression she was showing. She was so beautiful. I feel Violet and Ruby pinching my leg. And as soon as I wake up from my stupor, I look at my wives and see my wives' annoyed expressions. Ruby, my beloved daughter, I allow you to be with Victor, She spoke with a sensual smile. She looked completely different from a few moments ago. Huh? Thanks, Mother. Ruby thanked her. I decided something too. Suddenly, Scat Hack disappears and appears in front of me, and with a simple gesture, she attacks my stomach. Cough. I was breathless from the sudden attack, and soon I felt another attack on my neck that made me lose consciousness. Everything happened so fast that no one could react. Mother, Ruby squealed in surprise. What are you doing, bitch? Drop my darling. Violet yelled angrily. Realizing what was happening, lightning starts to crackle in Sasha's body, and she screams angrily. Let go of my husband. Scat Hack ignores Violet and Sasha's threats. She holds Victor like a sack of potatoes and speaks with a sensual smile as she licks her lips. I'm kidnapping my son-in-law. Huh? The three women exclaimed in unison. Before they could do anything, Scat Hack disappears along with Victor. Bitch! Violet screamed in uncontrolled fury. Her face was distorted with rage, and the fire poured out of her body uncontrollably. Realizing the danger of getting close to Violet, Maria, Natalia, Ruby, and Sasha quickly run away from Violet. Calm down, Violet! Ruby screamed, and when she heard the sound of thunder, she looked at Sasha, who was covered in lightning. She looked like she was about to do something. You too, Sasha. Calm down. Calm down. Sasha's face twisted in anger. My husband has been kidnapped. How can I be calm? Ruby started to get angry. You fools! Ruby's voice started to get cold, and the room started to get terribly cold. Then she spoke in a tone that made the mage shiver. Have you forgotten where you are? Control your powers. Listening to what Ruby said, Sasha and Violet bite their lips in frustration and regain consciousness, so they quickly rein in her powers. Ruby sighs. This place is protection, but what if you decide to get out of hand now? Do you want to hurt Darling's parents? You're right. Sasha sighs. What should we do now? Violet doesn't say anything. She just looks at Ruby, waiting for her words. My mom won't hurt our darling. Ruby started to explain. Remember what happened in the past when a man she didn't think was suitable approached me? They were exterminated. Sasha replied. Wrong. Their entire family was wiped out, Violet added. See? Ruby smiled. My mom approved of Victor. That means he'll be fine, I think. Huh? You're not sure? Violet raised her voice. Violet, you know my mother, she is very unpredictable. Violet bit her lip in frustration as she muttered various forms of torture she intended to do to anyone who touched Victor. I think she's going to train Victor? Sasha, who was a little calmer, spoke. You're right. She likes people who have potential. Ruby nodded. And my darling is a man with great potential. What do you think will happen to him? Violet asked as her eyes darkened. Ruby was silent. She didn't want to answer that question. This got interesting, right? Natalia suddenly spoke with a smile on her face. Violet, Ruby, and Sasha look at Natalia with a neutral gaze. Natalia, we should go home, Violet said. I know, but you guys need to sort something out first, Natalia said as she pointed up. You're right. Darling's parents are going to be worried, Ruby said. How are we supposed to do this? I don't think telling the truth would be the ideal option, Sasha asked. Then she adds, a few days ago, Violet had to lie and tell Victor's mom over the phone that she was going on her honeymoon with her son. I think this lie won't work again. I don't know how long it will take, but this time, I think it will take months for him to come home in /o/vel/b// and .c//om. Ruby puts her hand on her chin and starts to think about what to do. Where is Kagaya? Violet asked. Oh, she's in Victor's shadow, Natalia replied. The three wives all opened their mouths in shock. She's fast. Sasha spoke. As expected, Ruby smiled. Good job, Kagaya. I'm going to raise her salary. Violet displayed a happy smile. Why are you so happy? Sasha asked curiously. Kagaya is a dedicated maid. She will send me Darling's location. Oh, you're right. Sasha nods in agreement. Violet, Sasha, use your head. Ruby spoke in a neutral tone. Huh. Ruby explains, if my mom kidnapped Victor, she probably took him to that place. Fuck. Violet didn't like it at all. That place, huh? Sasha puts her hand on her chin, and she looks at Ruby. Sasha's eyes suddenly darken. Ruby, are your foster sisters in that place? Violet turns to face Ruby. She has the same face as Sasha. Ruby started to sweat a little when she saw Sasha and Violet's faces, but soon she replied, yes, they'll be in that place. Fuck. Violet's anger explodes again, and soon her body is covered in fire. She looks at Natalia. Open the portal. I'm going back home. I have to protect my darling. Yes, Lady Violet. Natalia wasted no time. She snaps her finger and then smiles. Done. Before Ruby and Sasha could react, Violet opened the door and walked through a portal that looked like the galaxy. Sasha's body started to crackle with lightning, but before she could follow Violet, her body was frozen by Ruby. You won't run away now? You must work something out with me first. Natalia, close the portal? Yes, Lady Ruby. Natalia snaps her finger, and soon the portal that looked like a galaxy disappeared. Ruby unfreezes Sasha. Why did you stop me? Before Ruby can say anything, she asks Natalia, what is someone from Clan Alioth doing with Violet? Shouldn't you just serve the king's family? This is a secret. Natalia smiled gently. Tisk, Sasha clicked her tongue in annoyance. Then, knowing she won't get Natalia's answer, she loses interest. She thinks for a moment and looks at Maria. Her eyes glow a little blood red, and she says, you can act normally. Maria's body trembles a little, and soon she regains control of her actions. Why did you do that? Maria asked in a cold, suspicious tone. I just don't want you to die for a random vampire when we get back home. Sasha spoke in an emotionless tone. Huh? Maria didn't understand why she did it. Ruby, who was watching all this, said, come on, Sasha. We have to go somewhere. Okay, Sasha agreed. Natalia, wait for us here. We're going to need your skill. And keep an eye on her. Ruby pointed at Maria. Natalia bowed a little. Your wish is my command, Lady Ruby. The evening that same day, I was trying to guess why you needed me to change my clothes into this simple outfit. Sasha spoke in disbelief as she stared at the door of Victor's parents' house. Sasha was wearing simple pants that looked too tight on her thighs. She was wearing a long brown shirt with a V neckline that showed a little bit of her F-cup breasts. Why, you are crazy. Sasha spoke in a stutter while her face was a little red with embarrassment. Ruby was wearing simple black pants. She was wearing a simple red shirt that could barely hide her G-cup breasts. Why, yes. Ruby's face seemed to be frozen. Ruby. Sasha approached Ruby. Are you nervous? She asked as she looked at Ruby's face stoic. And nervous, she stuttered. Seeing the smile on Sasha's face, she said, I'm fine. Chill. Speak quietly. Sasha yelled. Ruby just looked at Sasha with a blank expression. Let's get this over with. She spoke in a neutral tone. Ruby clicked on Victor's doorbell. They heard the bell, and the two women wait anxiously for someone to open the door. I am going. Suddenly, they hear a woman's voice. Both girls' hearts nearly came out of their mouth when they heard the voice of the woman who was clearly Victor's mother. When the door opens, and they see a beautiful woman with long black hair and sapphire blue eyes, they can't help but think that this woman is a lot like Victor. Who are you? The woman looked at the two women as if sizing them up. Then she looked at Ruby's bust for a moment, and she thought, so big. Is she bigger than mine? The woman looked at Sasha's legs and thought, her legs are so thick. She looked at the appearance of the two women again and thought, I don't remember meeting a blue-eyed blonde with such thick legs and a green-eyed redhead with breasts bigger than mine. Ruby's face was so red at this point that her brain wasn't thinking straight, and Mother W. are Victor's two wives. Nice to meet you. Huh. The woman's brain stopped working. Ruby. Sasha's face turned red with embarrassment. She approaches Ruby's ear. What are you doing, idiot? Ruby looks at Sasha with red eyes, almost crying, and speaks, I don't know any more. Ugh, fix the misunderstanding quick. She whispered, almost screaming. Why don't you help too? Ruby whispered. Don't ask for the impossible. The woman has come out of her stupor, and she looks at the two women again. What did you two say? Sasha was startled by the sudden question. Mother, we are Victor's wives. Nice to meet you. Idiot. Ruby yelled. Oh, my boy has two more wives. She didn't think it was a lie. As an experienced lawyer, she knew when someone was lying, and these two girls weren't. Suddenly, the woman touched her head and looked sick, and slowly, she starts to fall. And Mother! Ruby and Sasha yell in unison. They quickly grab the woman and see that she was unconscious. Ugh, my head is hurting. Where am I? I look around and see I was in a room I didn't know. The room looked old. I felt like I walked into those old movies. You finally woke up, stranger. Suddenly, I heard a woman's voice. I look towards where I heard the woman's voice, and I see a girl with wild, long red hair. She was on the ceiling of the room, standing as if gravity didn't affect her. But then, the girl fell to the ground and stood up. She was very short. I think she must have been Kagaya's height. She was wearing a simple red dress. She looked at me with a big smile on her face. Suddenly, I remember what happened, and I get out of bed. Wow, you're big. I heard the girl's voice, but I ignored her. She seemed to be talking about my height. I look around and see a window. I walk towards the window, and when I see the world outside, I couldn't help asking out loud, where in the seven hells am? A dark city with architecture that reminded me of medieval times. A place where the sun never rises. A place where every corner is an unknown danger. A city that was built thinking about the nature of vampires. That was the impression I had when I first looked at this city. Welcome to Nightingale, the city of moonlight, stranger, I heard the girl's voice. I look at her and ask, who are you? And where am I? Me? My name is Lakis, she replied, but suddenly another voice added. Lord Victor, you are in the world of vampires. Be careful when acting. Kagaya? I called confused. I look around, and I don't see her, but when I looked at my shadow, I saw Kagaya's shadow. She seemed to have a slight smile on her face. Kagaya? The girl looked confused. Never mind, I said, trying to change the subject. I looked down and see that I was in a nightgown. Were my clothes? The girl didn't say anything. She just pointed to a spot. I look at the place and see a small dresser with black clothes on top. I walk over to the clothes and pick them up. Black suit, black shirt, and black gloves. I look at the woman. Why is everything black? Mother ordered it, she spoke in a neutral tone. Scat hack, I said with a smile on my face. The girl's red eyes suddenly glowed blood red. It's Countess Scat hack for you. Have respect, stranger. I smiled with a distorted face and said, where's Scat hack? Suddenly the woman's killing intent exploded. She opened her mouth, and I could see that her teeth were sharper. N/O/vel/B//in.C//om. I just looked at her with a smile on my face as I thought. Her killing intent is much weaker than Scat hack. Sigh. Did Lord Victor acquire suicidal tendencies when his evolution ended? Why are you teasing her? I just didn't like the way she talked to me. That's it. I spoke out loud while ignoring the girl and putting on my clothes. After experiencing the pressure of my mother-in-law, I got numb. I think this girl is strong, but my instincts don't scream danger like when I face my mother-in-law. Finishing dressing, I looked at the girl who was still staring at me. Won't you guide me? Finally, the girl's pressure disappeared, and she looked at me with a bit of shock on her face. What? I asked. Why aren't you being affected? Oh. I smiled a sharp, toothy grin at the girl. After feeling the pressure of my mother-in-law, I got numb, and it doesn't seem to affect me anymore. And mother-in-law? She stuttered in shock. Yes, I'm Ruby's husband, didn't you know? And no, Mother just threw you in here and told me to keep an eye on you. She practically yelled red-faced. Why was she embarrassed? That's something she would do now. Will you guide me? I asked. Yes. Ha ha ha. If I knew you were my sister's husband, I wouldn't treat you like that. Come on. I'll take you to my mother. The girl's attitude suddenly changed when she found out I was Ruby's husband. And why did she believe me so easily? Isn't she very innocent? Walking through the house, building, mansion. I don't know anymore. This place is too big. I'll look around. I think this is a mansion. And despite being a massive mansion, it was very empty. How many vampires live in this place? Me, Pepper, Sienna, Ruby, and our mom. There's Ruby's personal maid who is Luna, but she's doing something for my mom now. I see. I actually didn't understand why this place was so empty, but she didn't seem like she was going to explain anymore. Soon I hear Kagaya's voice. Unlike other count houses, Countess Scathach doesn't have many subordinates. After all, just her alone is enough to sustain the title of Vampire Count. Strange, why aren't any count houses attacking her? I asked out loud as I ignored Lake's confused face. They are afraid of retaliation. Countess Scathach is just too strong, and the count houses are prohibited from fighting each other on the orders of the king. But that doesn't apply to noble houses, huh? I spoke when I remembered that my wife Sasha's family lost the count title through a game. Yes, any noble house can request a game with a count house, but they must be prepared for retaliation if they lose. Oh, explain. I was interested. Are you crazy, brother-in-law? Why are you talking to yourself? Lakis asked. I like to talk to myself, I reply, smiling. Oh. She turned her face and kept walking, but I could hear, is Ruby right in her head to choose this madman as a husband? My smile almost broke when I heard her calling me crazy. I hear Kagaya's voice again. The rules are simple. Houses with the title of counts cannot fight each other, nor can they request a match for the noble house. After all, this would be considered an abuse of power. Because typically vampire counts are vampires who have lived over 1,000 years and have already accumulated a lot of influence and strength. If the noble house loses the game with the count's house, they have to be prepared for retaliation. Vampire counts are prohibited from attacking the lowest nobles. But there is a rule where this does not apply when the noble house attacks the vampire count's house. As I understand it, it's a system that benefits the noble houses. The families that have the title of count cannot fight each other, and they can't ask for a game to fight the noble houses that have no title either. But the houses of nobles that have no title can ask for a game with the houses of counts at any time. What are the consequences of losing this game? If the game is betting a nobleman's title and both parties agree, the consequences of losing this game are everything. Everything? Yes, they lose everything. All riches, all possessions, and even vampires become property of the loser. What did you say? An irritating feeling started to grow in my heart, and soon it spread through my entire body. Kagaya, I called. Oh! Lakis looked interested in what was going on. Kagaya steps out of my shadow, and I look at her. What do you mean by properties? Exactly what the word means. All vampires in that house become the loser's property. They become slaves. Kagaya spoke coldly. Huh? My smile distorts, but it's not from fun, it's from hate. My beloved wife's family lost a game recently. Just imagining my wife being owned by someone else, this hatred spreads throughout my body. It was like a fire that burned throughout my body. Ha! This can only be a bad joke. Is my beloved honey someone else's property? I lean against the wall as I put my hand on my chest. My heart was beating too fast, unforgivable. Crack! I heard the wall break with the force I put in, but I didn't care. Lord Victor, calm down. Kagaya approaches me and starts massaging my chest. We still don't know if that's what happened. You need to calm down and control your instincts. Crack! Crack! I tighten my grip on the wall, and soon the wall collapses. I take a deep breath and force a gentle smile onto my face. You're right, Kagaya. I need to learn more. I stroke Kagaya's head, and somehow it made me calmer. Thank you, She nodded as she smiled. I look down the hall, and soon my vision changes to a blood-red world. I see 3 female vampires in this place. One female vampire was in a room that looked like a bathroom, and the other 2 were sitting in a room that looked like a bedroom. For a moment, one of the vampires who was sitting looked at me and smiled. I found her. I smile. I see Kagaya stepping into my shadow, and then I run towards my mother-in-law. When Victor ran towards Scathach, Lakis, who was nearby, just stared at the wall that had been reduced to ash when Victor left. Oh, isn't that the Snow Clan's skill? Her eyes sparkled with curiosity. 2 women with long red hair and red eyes were having a red tea while looking at the moon. So, why did you kill your husband? Scathach asked the woman beside her in a neutral voice. The woman next to Scathach was wearing long black stockings, a short blue dress, and black high heels. He approached me just to be on good terms with you, mother, she explained. The usual? Indeed, the woman nodded. Sienna, my beloved eldest daughter, why don't you create a husband? I already made the suggestion. How long ago was it? 700 years ago. Yes, Scat smiled gently. My memory is a little bad because of my old age. She laughed seductively. Sienna just rolled her eyes when she saw her mother's attitude. I don't want to create a husband. After all, that isn't going to be something real like I'm looking for. Despite being over 700 years old, you're still naive? I'm not naive. You know that I just want something real, and male vampires are just obsessed with things like titles. Why don't you turn a human then? Sienna's face twisted in disgust. Turning cattle into a husband? No, thank you. Scat rolled her eyes at the eldest foster daughter's attitude. Soon she lost interest in the subject and looked toward the bedroom entrance with a big smile on her face. Seeing her mother smile, Sienna thought, looks like she found something interesting to do again. Suddenly the bedroom door was broken, and Victor appeared. Scat. Victor looked at Scat and ignored the woman beside her. Sienna's eye twitched a little when she heard the disrespectful way Victor called Scat. As the daughter of the strongest female vampire in the world, she had a lot of respect for her mother, and she didn't like someone inferior calling her so informally. And this feeling was shared by the 3 adoptive sisters. Sienna was about to say something, but her mother's following words left her speechless. She smiled seductively as she crossed her legs elegantly. My son-in-law, were you so desperate to see me? At the same time in Victor's house. Here I got water, Sasha offered. Tea thanks. Anna was still very shaken. She drank all the water in one gulp. Then, when she saw Zach walking calmly through the house, she quickly got up from the couch and grabbed him. Meow? She sits down on the couch again and starts stroking Zach. Meow. Ruby and Sasha's eyes sparkled for a moment when they saw Zach. They thought he looked too cute to pet. Sasha approaches Ruby and sits beside her. Anna looks at the 2 women and sighs. Okay, let's start at the beginning. Why, yes. Ruby was a little nervous. First, did you do that? That? Ruby and Sasha didn't understand. I mean, what husband and wife do? Did you guys do it? Oh, Sasha exclaimed, and then she remembers the moment she sucked Victor's blood. Yes, we did, she smiled. Indeed, Ruby confirmed. I see. She stuttered a little and squeezed Zach a little harder without realizing it. Meow. Realizing what she was doing to Zach, she quickly stopped squeezing Zach. Anna takes a deep breath and asks, why you said you were married to my son, right? Why, yes, both confirmed. Violet, does she know? For some reason, she didn't stop stuttering. Yes, she knows. Ruby confirmed. Yes, she accepted our relationship. Sasha confirmed as well. Anna looked at the 2 women with a blank expression. Both women were sweating profusely now. They were a little afraid of being rejected by Anna. Anna sighed again. She looked tired, like she lost some kind of battle. How can I say, congratulations on the wedding? I guess. Huh. Anna's words took time to register in Ruby and Sasha's brains. Thanks, Ruby smiled happily. Thanks, mother, Sasha stuttered a little. Seeing the 2 women's honest smiles, Anna looked like she'd suffered heart damage. I think my son will die soon. He was very lucky in a short time. Something is not right. Anna's own thoughts were confused. And to imagine that my son would have 3 wives. After the initial shock, she slowly began to come back to her personality. In our country, this is normal, Ruby said. Oh, which country do you live in? Ruby was taken aback by the question. Legally, she is registered as Romanian, but the country she lives in is not registered on the world map. Sasha looks at Ruby with a talkative look, and then she continues, we live in a small community in Romania. Romania? But Romania doesn't have polygamy. n/o/vel/b//and.c//om. Sasha was nervous. We live in a small community, but that's not a problem. We can get married in Alabama. Ruby looked at Sasha like she was looking at an idiot. But Alabama is for incest. Anna said, huh. Sasha's face turned red. Suddenly Anna's face darkened in horror. Don't tell me my son went after your sister. Or even worse, he went after your mother. Does he plan to make Oyakadon? And no. Sasha was more confused than she was, and her eyes began to roll. She meant that in our community, polygamy is allowed. Ruby helped Sasha. Oh. Anna's face cleared a little. Then she sighed. I need to talk to my son. That's what we came to talk about. Ruby continued. Huh. Anna looked at Ruby. Seeing Anna's look, Ruby started to get nervous again. She found it very difficult to talk about it with her husband's mother. And her eyes started to roll. Sasha, Violet, and I want Victor to find our moms to ask her to marry him. Huh. Anna and Ruby herself didn't understand. As expected, it's an Oyakadon. Anna puts her hand to her head as if she has a bad headache. Zach takes this chance and runs away from Anna's lap. And no, that's not it. Sasha takes a deep breath and says it all at a fast pace. She meant that Victor traveled from Violet to Romania with the intention of asking our mothers for their blessings for our marriage. Sasha could embarrass most rap singers in the world with the speed she spoke those words. He traveled to Romania to meet his mother-in-law. Anna leans back on the couch. My son is growing up fast. Until a week ago, he didn't even have a girlfriend. She looked like she reached enlightenment. Suddenly the women hear the door open. Honey, I'm home. Leon, Victor's father, spoke as he walked towards the living room. When he arrived in the room and saw two beautiful women, he suddenly stopped in shock and looked at his wife, confused. Then, seeing the state of his wife, he was even more confused. What's going on here? Hello, father-in-law, the two said. Huh? He opened his mouth in shock. Unaware of the little chaos his wives were causing with his parents, Victor was at this point meeting his mother-in-law. She smiled seductively as she crossed her legs elegantly. My son-in-law, were you so desperate to see me? I swallow a little dryly when I look at my mother-in-law. She really knew how to tease me with just a simple gesture. When I was going to answer her question, I heard the woman next to her saying, as son-in-law. Looking at her, I see a woman with long red hair and eyes as red as Scat Hack. Who are you? I asked. Before the woman could say anything, I heard from Scat Hack. She is my eldest adopted daughter. Oh, cool. Anyway, I lost interest. I look at my mother-in-law, who was wearing clothes that seemed to be glued to her curvy body. Why did you kidnap me? My mother-in-law's smile grew. She got up and walked towards me sensually. For a moment, I was mesmerized by those two mountains that looked unbearably soft. They were full, round, smooth, and perfectly shaped. She gently touched my face and spoke with the same sensual tone, as if she were seducing me. You said it was a shame you weren't strong enough to fight me, right? Slowly, my smile grew, and I nodded, yes. We should fix that, right? Her smile changed to a predator smile that showed all her sharp teeth. Oh, indeed, I smiled just like her. Oh, fuck. She found another madman. I heard Sienna speak, but I ignored her. Scat Hack's smile changed to a satisfied smile. She took her hand away from my face and looked at a spot. Then she yelled, Pepper! Her voice seemed to resonate throughout the mansion. Yesh! I heard an awkward voice answering. Suddenly, a girl with long red hair, a curvy body, and breasts that seemed to rival Scat Hack appeared. She was just wearing a towel around her body. I've arrived, mother. She put a hand to her head like a soldier. Good. She looked at me, and for a moment, she seemed to study my reaction. But, seeing me not reacting much, she seemed pleased with something. She is my youngest adopted daughter. As you may have heard, her name is Pepper. Nice to meet you. She flashed a goofy grin on her face. Nice to meet you, I said in a neutral tone. For some reason, even though she was an attractive woman, I wasn't attracted to her. I felt that something was missing in her. Your initial training is simple. You must identify and learn to use your powers dash. Before she can finish, I open my hand. Suddenly, a fireball appears. Oh! She displayed a curious smile. Huh? Sienna exclaimed in surprise. Fway! Pepper looked surprised. The fire disappeared, and soon lightning began to crackle in my hand. Then the lightning disappeared, and soon a block of ice appeared in my hand. Even my mother's powers. Sienna said, looking at me, Ruby married someone interesting. I heard someone's voice. I looked to Sienna's side and saw Lakis smiling with a curious look. I point my hand in a direction that had no one and say, All blood belongs to me. But nothing happens. What are you trying to do? I heard Scat Hack asking, her voice sounding heavier than usual. Give me a sec. What did I do? Remember the memory I got from Ruby? I close my eyes and try again, but I can't. TSK, I can't get the right feeling to use that power. Suddenly, I heard a voice in my ear that shivered through my whole body. Victor, don't be in a hurry. I look to the side and see Scat Hack's distorted smile. Her eyes were glowing red, and she was staring at me with a possessive face. You have all the time in the world to get better. She spoke with a seductive smile. You're right. Seeing that smile made my body shiver. I needed to fight her. Train the basics with Pepper. She may be an airhead, but she's strong. I will. I nod and pull my attention away from my mother-in-law and look at Pepper. I walk over to the woman and pick her up like a sack of potatoes. Kaya? She yelled in a thin voice. What are you doing? You have to train me, right? I'm kidnapping you. Great. He has the same attitude as my mom. Sienna said, but as usual, I ignored her. Huh? Before she can say anything, I put strength in my legs and run to an open spot that I saw with my eyes. When Victor left, Sienna asked her mother, Is that all right? Scat Hack looked at her daughter. When Sienna saw Scat Hack's smile, she felt her entire body tremble in fear. Oh, about Pepper? It's all right. Victor is a good man. He won't do anything against Pepper. Sienna and Lakis opened their mouths, looking like a fish who didn't know what to say. They were just too shocked. They had never seen their mother praise a man in their life before. You look happy, Mom. Lakis commented. Happy? Scat Hack spoke, confused. Then she put her hand to her face. Maybe I am. Her smile changed to a seductive smile. I have something to do. I'll see you guys later. Scat Hack soon disappears. I think she's glad she found a man with potential. After all, she likes to fight, Lakis questioned. Is that what you think? Sienna asked as she looked at her sister. Yes, Lakis replied. She looked at her sister. What do you think? I don't know, but she wouldn't react so strongly if that man just had a big potential. The two sisters had many doubts in their heads, but one thing they were sure of, they were curious about the man who had piqued their mother's interest. Violet's perspective, a few minutes before Victor woke up. Going through the portal, Violet realized she was at her house. Just as she was about to leave her house and look for Victor, she heard a cold voice. Lady Violet, you finally came home. She looks at the voice and sees a maid with short white hair and blue eyes. She was the personal maid and head maid of the Snow Clan. N/O/vel/B//and.C///OM. Oh, it's you, Hilda? Anyway, I'm leaving. Violet starts running towards Scat Hack's mansion. She passes by Hilda's side. Wait, Hilda grabbed Violet by her shirt collar. Ugh! Violet was almost hanged. Then she turns to face Hilda. Are you going to get in my way too? Seeing Violet's lifeless eyes, Hilda said coldly, Of course not. But as a maid, I have a duty to do. She started walking as she dragged Violet by her shirt collar. And my order was that when you came home, I should take you to meet your mother. Let go of me. I don't want to see that old woman. I'm going back to my darling. Violet tried to free herself from Hilda's grip, but it was a futile attempt. Hilda has stopped walking. She looks at Violet, her blue eyes change to blood red. You did the ritual? Violet puts on a smug expression. Of course I did. But soon, her expression crumbles, although there were some unforeseen events. Oh, this is something your mother should know. Hilda started walking again. She pulled Violet and held her like a sack of potatoes. Ah! Violet began to struggle. Let go of me. Hilda ignored Violet and continued walking. In all the millennium I've served the Snow family, I've never seen anyone as reckless as you. Hilda puts a hand to her face as if she's thinking about something and keeps talking in the same cold tone. Coming to think about it, you have the same personality as your mother when she was younger, although you are less aggressive than her. Annoying, Violet muttered angrily. Violet's body began to become covered in fire. Oh! Hilda looks at the fire in Violet's body. Your powers have grown stronger. That's good news. Hilda smacks Violet on the ass. Slap. Ugh. Don't be a rude child. You know the rules, right? She spoke in a cold tone as her eyes glowed red. Can't use powers indoors, right? Violet snorted and continued. I haven't forgotten. Now let go of me. The only one who can hit my ass is my darling. Hilda sighed. I think it's because you're only 21 years old. And because of that, you're really spoiled? Soon she started walking. Violet got angry again. I'm already an adult by human standards. But to us, you're still a newborn baby. She looked around and even looked in her shadows. Where's Kagaya and Natalia? Shouldn't they be protecting you? Giving up on running away, for now. Violet sighed and said, Kagaya is protecting my darling, and Natalia stayed behind with Ruby and Sasha. The Fulgur heiress and the Scarlet heiress. She puts her hand to her chin and continues, I heard they were in that town too. What happened to your darling? She asked in a neutral tone. He was kidnapped by Ruby's mother. Violet started to get angry again. Oh, looks like Countess Scathack took an interest in your darling. Of course, she would be interested in him. He has great potential. She squealed proudly. Oh. Hilda displayed a small smile. Hilda enters a room, and then she puts Violet on the floor. Lady Agnes, Lord Adonis. I brought Lady Violet. Oh, good job, Hilda. Violet looks at her mother, who was sitting on a sofa. She was a curvaceous woman with big H-cup breasts and skinny legs. She had pale vampire skin and golden eyes, a very unusual eye color even for vampires. She had long white hair that reached to her waist and wore simple glasses. She was wearing black leather pants and a long black shirt. Are you still wearing those glasses, Mom? It's not like you have a vision problem, Violet commented. But I look good in glasses, right? Violet's mother, Agnes, spoke with a narcissistic smile. Whatever, Violet snorted. You're still in the same bad mood. I thought meeting your darling would calm you down a bit. She sneered at the word darling. Violet, hearing the obvious tone of contempt, didn't like it one bit. Violet looks at her mom, and slowly her eyes begin to darken. What did you say, bitch? Agnes's face distorted when she heard her daughter call her. Are you that attached to those cattle? Violet's eyes changed to blood red, and she looked at her own mother like she was about to jump her neck at any moment. Daughter, don't fight with your mother in my room. Okay. She suddenly heard a gentle voice, gentle as if blessed by heaven itself. Agnes, don't tease our daughter. She's different from you. He spoke a little coldly as his eyes glowed a little violet. Humph. Agnes turned her face away. Violet ignores her mother, then looks at the bed and sees a pale, frail-looking man with short white hair and violet eyes. Despite looking like a frail man, he still displayed a supernatural beauty that was far superior to any woman and man Violet had encountered. Violet thought, my dad is handsome, but my darling is prettier. But I'm a little jealous. I wish I had inherited just a little of that supernatural beauty. Violet looks at her mother's breast and thinks, I should have inherited those breasts too. Why are genes unfair? Violet was still a woman. She still had few insecurities, especially now that Ruby had become Victor's wife. Adonis had a gentle expression on his face as he looked at his daughter. Come here, daughter, he called her. Violet nodded and walked towards the bed. When she got closer to her father and saw how weak he was, she said, Are you okay? Although she didn't show it when Scathack asked in the past, she was still worried about her father. She was closer to him than her very narcissistic mother. He smiled gently. Yes, I'm fine. I just need to drink blood, and I'll be brand new. Liar, she whispered. You always say that, but you never get better. Ha ha, he laughed in a weak voice. He slapped the bed with a gesture for her to go up. Come here. Tell me about your darling. Violet bites her lip. She wanted to talk to her father, but she wanted to find Victor first. Seeing his daughter's expression, he asked, Are you worried about something? I need to see my darling. He is in danger. Oh, tell me what happened. Violet started to explain what happened to Victor, and without realizing it, she started talking more about Victor to her father. She climbed into bed and sat up, and soon she looked like a child who came home and told her father everything about her day. A few minutes later, Adonis laughed with a gentle smile. He seems to be an interesting man. I would like to meet him in the future. I will bring him in the future, so you can meet him, Violet asked excitedly. Seeing how excited his daughter was, he laughed a gentle laugh and asked, Just out of curiosity, you didn't kidnap him, right? Violet thought for a moment and replied, "Of course not." "Good, good." As expected, you are very different from your mother. He sighed, relieved for himself and for Victor. "Hey, why are you so happy?" Agnes, who was silent, asked with a pout. Adonis looked at Agnes and spoke in a dry tone. "Well, the experience of being kidnapped and raped for a whole month can hardly be forgotten no matter how long I live." Ugh, she seems to have taken damage, but then she spoke angrily. "Just forget about it. That happened 1800 years ago. I'm not the same woman I was before." He flashed a gentle smile. "Indeed, you're no longer a crazy, psychopathic hedonist who did what you wanted." The woman's face just distorts several times, listening to what her husband was saying. He continued with the same gentle smile. "Now you're just a narcissistic woman. And because of that personality, our daughter doesn't like to talk to you." Agnes looks at Violet. "That's not true, right? You like me, right?" Violet just turned her face away and ignored her mother. Agnes looked like she could cry at any moment, but Violet and Adonis didn't care. Adonis sighed and looked at Violet, and speaks with a fatherly smile. "Even though your mother is the way she is, I've learned to love her over the years." He said that, but inside he was thinking, I was beaten by Stockholm Syndrome and those breasts. Well, she's better than that bitch Aphrodite and Persephone. Sigh. My life is a disaster. It's a sin to be born beautiful. Adonis was a bit narcissistic too. "Darling." Agnes looked at Adonis with possessive eyes. Seeing Agnes's gaze, he smiled a helpless smile. He promised never to tell anyone he liked the look his wife gave him. Feeling a sudden pain in his chest, Adonis displays the best smile he can muster and says, "It's time." "Huh? I think you should find your darling." Violet's eyes flashed with possessiveness, and then she yelled, "Darling." Soon she ran towards the exit of the mansion. He held back his laugh, but then he laughed gently. "Ha! I think she's a bit like you, Agnes." "Humph," Agnes snorted, but Adonis could see she had a gentle smile on her face. "I still don't agree with my daughter relating to cattle," she said grumpily. Adonis exhibited a gentle smile and said, "Oh? So, I am cattle too?" "I see." Agnes' body shook, and she quickly said, "No. You are different from those humans." "Oh? How am I different?" he asked curiously. Agnes' face glowed in possession. "You're mine, darling." A few minutes later, in the personal garden of Scat Hacker's mansion, despite calling it a garden, this place looked more like a forest than a garden. "Cough." The girl in front of me pretended to cough. She massaged her throat a little. She was trying to thicken her voice. "AB. Testing 1, 2. She looks at me with a serious face and speaks. "My name is Pepper. As per my mother's orders, I'm responsible dash." I interrupted her. "Aren't you going to change your clothes?" "Fway." She looked confused for a moment. She looked down and saw that she was still wearing a towel. "Oh." Suddenly, I hear a small explosion, and I see her face turning bright red. Then she disappears with surprising speed. At the same time that happens, my shadow expands, and soon Kagaya comes out of my shadow. "Lord Victor." "Oh, Kagaya, what happened?" I asked as I stroked her head. She doesn't say anything and just stays silent. Feeling her black hair in my hand, I smile contentedly and say, while we wait for Pepper, "Do you have any training tips?" Believe in yourself?" she said. My smile threatened to break. "Is that supposed to help me in any way?" Noble vampires instinctively know how to use their powers when they are born. The only problem we have is controlling the output of our power. After all, depending on the noble vampire's bloodline, their power can reach absurd levels. "I see. So you are born geniuses," I continued, stroking her head. "You are wrong." Kagaya spoke. She thought for a moment and continued. "It's like a baby who instinctively knows how to cry or ask their mother for food. With our species, it's the same. We instinctively know how to use our power. The only problem we have is to control and improving that power to new levels." "I see." I understood what she said. It's like moving your arm. You know instinctively how to move your body, right? It's basically something like that. Suddenly, I see a red silhouette, and soon I see that Pepper has returned wearing new clothes. She's wearing a red uniform and black tights. She looks at me with her face a little embarrassed. Let's continue. She intends to ignore everything that happened, huh? Okay, I said as I stopped stroking Kagaya's hair. Cough, she coughed again and explained in a cute voice. Let's skip the basics. After all, you already know what your unique powers are. So what we're going to do today is learn to control the basic powers of a vampire. What do you mean? I asked, confused. It's something like this. She looks like she's going to demonstrate something. She looks at a tree in the distance and says, "Pay attention, I'll just run normal." Pepper suddenly positions herself. Her body starts to be covered by a fog, and she disappears and then reappears in front of the tree, and soon she returns to the same position again. See? This is a basic skill for all vampires. As creatures of the night, we can blend into the night easily. What I've demonstrated now is fog walking. That was cool. Can all vampires do this? Despite speaking in a neutral voice, my eyes were gleaming with curiosity. Yes, it's a basic skill. This time, Kagaya answered me. The basic vampire skills are fog walking, bat transformation, night vision, and claws, she said. She points her hand at me, and I see her hand has changed. Her nails have gotten sharper and more deadly, and her hand has seemed to grow stronger. Pepper looks at Kagaya with a pout on her face. Kagaya just looks at Pepper with a stoic look. Pepper puffed out her chest in annoyance. Boing! Boing! And they swayed like crazy. For a moment, I see Kagaya's black eyes turning blood red. She looks annoyed at something. Soon Pepper goes on to explain. Noble vampires usually ignore these basic abilities and focus only on the powers they inherited from their parents. For example, she pointed to Kagaya. This maid, she has the power to control the shadows. And using those powers, she modified the basic vampire abilities to fit her power. I remember Kagaya's fight with Mizuki, and I nod in agreement. She seemed to walk in the shadows in that fight. n/o/vel/b/gen.c//om. Oh, do you know Kagaya? I asked, curious. Yes, she was always around when Violet came to visit Ruby. Why doesn't Lakis know Kagaya? Lakis! She's really lazy. She just stays asleep and only wakes up when something interesting happens. She looked uncomfortable for some reason. Because of that, she doesn't know the people who visit our house. Oh, I didn't know what to say. This seemed to be a family issue, something like having a child who is an NED. She looks at me with neutral eyes, then continues. Why don't you try to get used to the basic powers first? Try to use your basic vampire powers, and when you get used to them, we'll train the powers you were born with. Why should we train these powers if they aren't used a lot? I asked with genuine doubt. After all, I haven't seen my wives using these powers. My mother always said that the basics are the most important. You need a strong foundation to build the pillars for your strength in the future. I'll try. That sounds interesting too. I feel like those men in the comics who are discovering their powers. I position myself to run, and before I can do anything, I heard Kagaya warning me. Remember Lord Victor, don't use your unique powers. Just use your racial powers. I know, I just have to turn into mist, right? Yes, she confirmed. Let's try. Pepper said, I must know how to use this ability instinctively. I close my eyes and think of the image of Pepper running, focusing on what I should do. Then I open my eyes and I try to imitate what Pepper did. I put some strength in my legs and run towards the tree. Lakis and Sienna, who were drinking tea, suddenly hear an explosion as if a lightning bolt has fallen to the ground. Boom! What is it? It is not raining. Lakis was startled by the sudden noise. Sienna just looks at her sister with a neutral expression. She drinks the tea, which contains a red drink, and explains, the noise came from the garden. I think it's our mother's guest Dash. Sienna stopped talking when she saw Lakis had left. She sighs. She's too rushed. Pepper and Kagaya heard an explosion as if lightning had fallen to the ground, and soon after, they saw the tree destroyed and in pieces. Then, fire started to come out of Victor's body, and soon he slammed his body into a rock. Well, I knew it would happen, but the destruction is bigger than I expected, Kagaya commented. Wawa, the forest is on fire. Pepper was freaking out. Kagaya hits Pepper on the head. Ouch! She puts her hand to her head. and looks at Kagaya with a face that could cry at any moment. What? Why did you hit me? Calm down and use your powers, Kagaya spoke. Suddenly, Pepper's expression lit up. Oh. Pepper steps on the ground. The ground broke with the force she put in, and soon a massive amount of water started coming out of the cracks. She points her finger at the forest and yells, "Why?" The water she was controlling rises to the skies and began to fall into the forest as if the place were raining. As a surprising display of control, Pepper just doused the spreading fire. "Good job," Kagaya said. She laughed as she scratched her head. Kagaya uses her speed and runs towards Victor. Seeing that Kagaya is gone, Pepper follows her example and uses her speed. "Lord Victor, didn't I tell you not to use your powers?" Kagaya asked. "I didn't try to use my powers," Victor muttered as he got up from a crater that was more than 1 kilometer wide. He didn't seem to be hurt. Then, realizing he was wet with water, fire started to come out of his body, and soon he was dry again. He looks at his clothes and thinks, "These clothes are amazing. They are quite resistant." Kagaya looks at the ground around Victor and sees that the soil was filled with small pieces of ice. Maybe. She seemed to be thinking of something. "I try to run like Pepper, but for some reason it happened." He pointed at the crater. "Fway." Pepper looked surprised. She looked around and said, "You tried to run like me and created this giant crater?" She asked with an expression of shock. "Pepper, what was that noise?" Lakis suddenly arrives, and she looks around. "Wow, this is big. Lord Victor, can you do something for me?" "Yes." "What is it?" Victor replied in a neutral tone. "Follow me," Kagaya said and started to run. Victor started following Kagaya, and soon Pepper and Lakis, who were curious about what was going to happen, began to follow as well. Kagaya stops in front of an ordinary tree. "See that tree? I want you to pull the tree out of the ground and throw the tree in a random direction." Victor didn't understand the purpose of this, but he did as Kagaya asked. Victor approaches the tree trunk and puts his hand gently on it. Somehow, he can instinctively sense that using one hand was enough. So he pulls the tree out of the ground and lifts it with ease. He looks at an empty spot and throws the tree. Everyone watched the tree that was suddenly frozen in the air. When that tree fell to the ground and broke the ice around it, a fire started to be created, and soon lightning fell from the sky. As expected, Kagaya seems to have figured something out. This is bullshit." Lakis suddenly yelled in frustration. She looked like she was freaking out. "Why?" Pepper was startled by the sudden scream. Victor puts his hand to his ear. "Why are you screaming, woman?" Lakis looks at Victor. "Don't you understand what you just did?" Victor looked at Lakis confused. "I threw the tree, and suddenly it turned to ice. When the ice fell to the ground started to catch fire, and suddenly lightning fell from the sky even though there were no clouds in the sky." He explained what he saw aloud. Lakis just looked at Victor with an expression that said she didn't believe what she was seeing in front of her. Lakis looked at Victor with an expression that didn't believe what she was hearing. "And even saying that you still don't understand what you did. Woman, stop walking around and say what you're thinking." "Ugh." Lakis puts her hand to her head like she has a headache. "Lady Lakis is frustrated because you did something impossible. My favorite maid enlightened me with knowledge." I look at Kagaya. "You used an attack to seamlessly unite the 3 powers." She looks at the minor damage my attack has done. This attack is basically the fusion of the powers of Clan Fulgur, Clan Scarlet, and Clan Snow. And the 3 women look at Victor in silence. Pepper sighs cutely. "He needs to learn about vampire society first." Kagaya nodded in agreement. "Listen, Victor. Let's do an example here, okay?" Lakis starts to explain as if she were explaining to a child. She picks up a stick from the ground and starts drawing a picture on the ground. "Let's use my sister Ruby as an example." She drew Ruby on the floor. Ruby is a vampire who inherited the powers of Scathach, the strongest female vampire in the world. In the beginning, my mother's powers weren't as strong as they are now. She could only create a block of ice. She drew Scathach using her powers. She had to train hard to raise her powers to the level it is now. And over the millennia, she managed to increase that power. And then at some point in my mom's life, she decided she wanted to have a daughter. At first, she was just bored, and she decided that on a whim. And like every strong female vampire at the time, she did the obvious. She kidnapped a vampire from a clan that had powers that could match her powers. Victor was speechless. The man who was the chosen one was a vampire who could control water and breathe underwater. Mom used the vampire until she became pregnant, and even went through the ritual and married the vampire. She did all of this to ensure that her child had greater potential than she did. A few years later, when Ruby was born, she killed her husband and raised Ruby on her own. And Ruby inherited the powers of both parents perfectly. She drew Ruby using her powers. Ruby could control water and ice, and she could also breathe underwater. She could also combine the two powers like you did now. Because of this peculiarity of our race, vampires are feared. After all, with each passing generation, vampires have the potential to surpass their parents. But unfortunately, that potential is wasted. She sighed and continued. Since she was little, Ruby has always had great power because of what happened in the past. She has the potential to surpass Scat-Hack, but she needs to train a lot. She looks at Victor and says, "What you've done now is literally impossible. You have the three powers of the strongest clans in the vampire world, and you've combined the powers perfectly." She looked at me. "Do you understand?" "Yes. My mother-in-law is crazy, and you draw really bad. And my wife has better potential than my mother-in-law and can surpass her in the future. And you draw really bad." Victor nodded with his head, indicating that he understood. "That's not it. I mean, that's it. But it's not that." "Ah!" Lakis yelled in frustration as she held her head. She looked at Victor. "And no need to say that I draw bad twice." Victor displayed a small smile when he saw Lakis' reaction. "In the world of vampires," Kagaya started to explain, and I look at her. Then, realizing I was paying attention to her, she continued. "All clans that hold the title of noble vampire these days have done something like that in the past. With each generation that passed, they'd make their children train to the limit, and then they'd find a partner who matched the clan's powers and made their heirs of children. 2,000 years of selective breeding, just to create a vampire with stronger potential than the parents. Although that kind of practice is quite limited because vampires have low fertility." Then she continues, "And suddenly, boom!" She made an exaggerated gesture with the same stoic expression on her face. "You showed up and used the three powers of the clan of vampire counts, and you're neither a son nor an heir of those clans. You basically ignored the whole history of the clan of vampires when existing. Because of that, she said that what you did, it's impossible. Lord Victor is an anomaly. His potential far surpasses most vampires out there." Victor opened his mouth in shock, and then he looked at his fists as he thought. So having these powers is considered abnormal. Victor was feeling weird. He didn't consider himself special or anything like that. But it wasn't a bad feeling. With this potential, if I train like crazy, maybe in less than a few years, can I get to my mother-in-law's level? I really want to fight her. "I get it. Thank you, Kagaya." I smiled gently and patted her head. Kagaya exhibited a small smile on her face. "Selective breeding, huh?" I put my hand on my chin, so my wife's families did that too. "Huh?" Pepper suddenly exclaimed in surprise. Why did you understand her confusing explanation and not mine? Lakis yelled. Victor ignored Lakis. Kagaya suddenly said, "Your wise clan doesn't need to do this. Let's use Ruby as an example again. Countess Scat-Hack was already a powerful woman when she decided to have a daughter. And when she had a daughter, the daughter was born with the potential to surpass her own mother in the end. It all depends on the parents themselves and the children's effort. After all, the children have a better start than the parents had." I see. I don't understand something. If vampires have this quirk as a race, why aren't they stronger than other factions? Well, there are noble vampires with the same personality as Cornelia, Kagaya explained. Who? Victor thought, confused. 80% of vampires worldwide are like that man, lazy, proud, and never trained. I just looked at Kagaya with a blank expression. But don't despair. 19% of vampires are workers, and only 1% are crazy about training like Lady Scat-Hack. Vampires are fucked. 80% of the vampire population is just useless. Victor thought, just out of curiosity, my wife Violet's mother and my wife Sasha's mother, are they just like Scat Hack? Victor's eyes gleamed for a moment. They're not the same? Lady Violet's mother is narcissistic and obsessed with her husband. She tried to find better words, but in the end, she just gave up. Lady Sasha's mother. She is obsessed with gambling and rarely trains, but with the two women living over 1900 years, they are powerful. But they are not on the same level as Ruby's mother. Oh! Victor looked disappointed for a moment. Why this sudden curiosity with the two women dash? Lakis was about to ask something, but suddenly Pepper yelled in a cute voice. Are you ignoring what he just said? Ah! Lakis looked at her sister. Didn't you hear? He just said my wives. She mimicked Victor's voice perfectly at the end. Oh, dash! Lakis looked at Victor. Do you have any more wives? She asked curiously. N/O/vel/B//Jen.C//om. Yes, I replied with a gentle smile. Who are they? Lakis asked with the same curiosity. Victor was going to answer the question, but didn't you hear? Pepper yelled again. He was talking about Violet and Sasha. Kaya, I need to tell my friends. The 3 flowers of the vampire world have been taken by a stranger. Lakis looked at her sister and said, Why are you just smart for these things? Lady Pepper likes to gossip. Kagaya sighed. She's just bored. Lakis sighed too. Why don't we train? We've already talked too much, Victor suggested, and started walking toward a more spacious place. Lord Victor is right. Kagaya started to follow Victor. The two sisters look at each other and nod. Then, they follow Victor too. Some minutes later, as Victor walked through the forest, he suddenly felt his throat go dry. Ugh! He dropped to his knees on the ground, his eyes changed to blood red, and his teeth started to change and get sharper. All? The symptoms that were quite common, Kagaya said, Bloodlust. This is a good time. Pepper yelled like she had a good idea. We should train bloodlust control. I disagree. Lord Victor's bloodlust is stronger than that of ordinary vampires. Therefore, the chance of him going mad is very high. Kagaya strongly disapproved. Why is his bloodlust stronger? Pepper asked in curiosity. Something happened in the past that made him like this. Kagaya spoke ambiguously. Pepper looked at Kagaya with a cute look. So, what are we supposed to do? Lakis asked. You don't need to do anything. I'm fine. Victor stood up and forced a gentle smile on his face, but it failed miserably because his sharp teeth were showing. Kagaya looked at Victor with a stoic expression. Lord Victor, are you sure everything is all right? Hasn't your bloodlust gotten stronger compared to before? Yes, it got stronger. Victor kept walking, then he explained. Even if I wanted to quench my thirst, my wives aren't around now, and it's impossible for me to quench my thirst with common blood. That's true. Because of that nuisance, I don't want to get married. Just imagine being dependent on someone else's blood for eternity. No thanks. Lakis snorted. Victor ignored Lakis and continued walking. Kagaya looked at Lakis with a neutral expression, but she didn't say anything. I found a place with space to train, Victor said while looking at a distant place with his vision, and soon he used his speed and ran towards the place. Kagaya, who was close to Victor, just ran along with him. Pepper looked at her sister with a cute look, but just shrugged and followed Victor. Huh? Wait. Don't leave me behind. Victor's house. So, Leon puts his hand on his head as if he has a bad headache. Are you telling me my son has 2 more wives, and you are them? Why, yes. Yes. Sasha stuttered a little when she spoke. She was very embarrassed. Ruby managed to respond in a more neutral tone and keep her face cool. Even though Leon had heard the confirmation from the 2 women, he still couldn't believe what he was hearing. And do you agree with that? I mean, aren't you guys jealous or something? He asked again. Ruby and Sasha look at each other. Then the 2 women look at Leon. I feel jealous, but since Ruby and Violet are my childhood friends, I don't really care that much. I feel like a lot hasn't changed, and that Victor has just joined the group. Sasha spoke with a confused expression on her face. It was her honest feelings, and even though she didn't understand that feeling completely, being with Victor soothed her a lot. She felt very comfortable. It was the same feeling as when she was with Julia. Indeed, I feel the same. I'm sure if we weren't childhood friends, this situation would be much more problematic. Ruby spoke as she thought. If they were other women, I would never have let them get close to my darling. Leon just looked at the two women with a shocked expression. So jealous. Leon suddenly felt a shiver in his body. He looked at his wife, and seeing the glow in her eyes, he pretended to cough. I feel jealous of how you three get together well with my son. I hope you can take care of him. Oh, thank you. Ruby spoke. Thanks? Sasha thanked him, a little confused. Leon, why yes, honey? He spoke with a strained smile on his face. How was your work? Anna asked with a small smile on her face. Huh? Oh, the work was good. I had little problems, but it's the usual. Anyway, I'm glad my son has two more lovely wives like you to look after him. He smiled at Ruby and Sasha. Sasha and Ruby's faces lit up, and they smiled happily. Thanks, Father, Sasha said. Thanks, Ruby said. Leon couldn't help but be enchanted by the two women's smiles. But when he felt his wife's gaze intensify, as if she were stabbing him in every inch of his body, he made the wisest decision he could make in this kind of situation. I have something to solve. Work calls. He got up from the couch and calmly walked up the stairs. I'll see you guys another day. He ran away. Nice job, Father. Don't work too hard, or you might get sick. Sasha was kind. Leon stopped walking and replied, looking at Sasha. I'm not going to, and thanks for your concern, Sasha. Leon went upstairs, and the moment he didn't feel his wife's gaze anymore, he crouched down on the stairs and put his ear to the wall. Then he thought, when did my son become a Chad? I know he inherited my bricklayer genes, but even I can't do something like that. A woman is already a big problem. Imagine having two more? Hell no. After the initial problems and Anna's shock to learn that her son has two more wives, she accepted the situation more easily when she found that the two personalities of the women were quite agreeable. Ruby was very quiet and had a cold expression on her face all the time, but she could see that there was a very kind woman behind that cold face. Sasha was more talkative than Ruby, but she was more easily embarrassed by heartfelt compliments. And when she called Sasha her daughter, Anna thinks she's found a new hobby of teasing Sasha. However, she will try very hard not to go overboard. n/o/vel/b/n.c//om. That was Anna's initial impression of Sasha and Ruby. What about Leon's opinion on this subject? It doesn't matter, and Anna planned to talk to him later. Leon felt his body shiver again. Anna was a little upset with Leon, but she wasn't angry with him or anything. She was just a little frustrated with her son's sudden change, and she knew exactly how to resolve that frustration. She was thinking it would be an excellent time to give Victor a brother or sister. Leon was a very simple man. He lives life simply, and if he likes something, he accepts it. If he doesn't like something, he shows his middle finger and says, "Fuck you." Leon is not very good with words like his wife. He prefers to work things out with his fist. But he's sensitive enough to see when his son is in trouble and help him whenever possible. He'd rather act than talk, an honest man. And from past experience, Leon could see from the moment he looked at Ruby and Sasha that the two were very nice women and had good personalities. They weren't women who would cause trouble for his son. Besides that, he didn't care too much. His thinking was simple. My son is an adult, and I trust him. But if I see he is going down a wrong path, I will advise him. And that same thought was shared by Anna, Victor's mother. Basement of Victor's house. Somehow it worked out. Sasha sat on the couch. She was mentally drained. I never want to do this again. I never thought it would be so tiring. She seemed to be melting on the couch. Ruby sat on the couch and crossed her legs elegantly. Why, yes, everything went according to plan. She stuttered a little. Sasha looked at Ruby out of the corner of her eye. She didn't even feel like pointing it out to Ruby right now. Natalia suddenly appears and brings a cup of tea that contains a red liquid inside. Thanks, but I don't want Dash. Ruby was going to refuse the tea. She didn't want to drink someone else's blood, but she stopped talking when she smelled the blood. This is my darling's blood. She swallowed hard. Sasha opens her eyes and looks into her cup of tea, her face suddenly twisting in disgust. When did you get this? Ruby asked curiously. When Lord Victor was sleeping, I collected some of his blood. Natalia smiled gently. Ruby looked at Natalia with a cold face. That's impossible. No one enters my darling's room without me or Sasha and Violet noticing. Oh, she used her powers. Is it okay to use your powers for something so insignificant? She asked, a little unsure. I have power. Why shouldn't I use it any way I want? Natalia replied. Ruby agreed with Natalia's reasoning. Are you going to take this? I wouldn't recommend it. Sasha suddenly spoke up. Why? Ruby asked, confused. Sasha explains. Although it's my husband's blood, for some reason the blood tastes really bad. It felt like I was eating spoiled food. It's better to drink straight from the source. Oh? You have tried? Ruby asked and complained a little. Don't treat our husband like he's a blood factory. I'm kidding. You need to relax more, Ruby, Sasha said. Humph, Ruby snorted. And for a few seconds, the two mounds swayed in a way that could mesmerize any straight man. Sasha rolled her eyes again. Answering your question, yes, I took the blood, and to this day, I regret drinking that blood. She had never felt so much like vomiting in her life. Natalia looks at Ruby with a gentle smile on her face. Will Lady Ruby want tea? Ruby looks at Natalia with a blank expression. No, I don't want to. She refused. Although the smell was appealing, she decided to trust Sasha. Oh, that's too bad, Natalia commented as she removed her tea and walked towards the kitchen. For a moment, she looked at Maria and thought, this maid, she's just not doing anything, right? And she doesn't even say anything either. Should I put her to work? Let's go back home? Ruby asked Sasha. Yes, let's go back. Sasha agreed and got up from the couch. But soon Sasha, Maria, Ruby, and Natalia looked to the middle of the room. A magic circle suddenly appears in the middle of the room. Hey, hey, hey. I came back with shocking information. The witch June appeared with a smile on her face. Current location: north in the territory of Countess Scathack Scarlet. Front of the Scathack mansion. Finally, I arrived. Violet squealed in frustration as she looked at the mansion entrance that was a grand, old-looking gate. Because of Natalia, I had to run from the south to the north. Damn, why didn't Natalia open the portal to Ruby's house? She was angry again, but then she sighs. As usual, this place is quite desolate. She looks around and sees only forests and snow-covered mountains. I never understood why that old hag chose her personal home in such a secluded place. Tisk tisk, Violet heard a woman's voice. You never learn, brat. Violet looks up and sees Scathack standing horizontally against her gate wall. Where's Victor? Violet asked impatiently. Scathack drops to the ground and responds. He's training with Pepper. What? Violet screamed in horror. She remembers Pepper's appearance. That bitch is going to seduce my darling. I will kill her. Violet's eyes started to change to red, and her teeth began to get sharp. Seeing Violet's face, Scathack approaches Violet and hits her on the head. Ouch! Violet puts her hand on her head and glares at Scathack angrily. What was that dash? Stop your paranoia, brat. Don't you trust your husband? Of course I trust him. I don't trust your daughter. Violet yelled. She points a finger at Scathack and continues. Your daughters were raised by you. They can at any time kidnap my husband and do this and that to him. Makes sense? Scathack has always raised her daughters to be strong and independent women. Of course, her upbringing is quite questionable these days. Scathack turned around and entered her house. He's in the forest. Violet's eyes flashed red, and then she was gone.